West Denver. Sleep deprived and heavily caffeinated.
All right, let's do this then.
This is the Jeff and Bill Show.
I don't agree with that.
They don't always agree, but hey, at least they have coffee.
Coffee.
And each other.
I love you, man.
God help us.
I want to bless him. We need all the help we can get.
Now here's Jeff Hunt and Bill Thorpe. The Jeff and Bill Show on News Talk 710 KNUS.
It is 6 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Tuesday, April 29th, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned in to the Jeff and Bill Show. News Talk 710 KNUS. Today marks 100 days since President Trump took office. White House correspondent John Decker traveling with the president on Air Force One to Michigan, where he will mark the occasion, joins us live. Good morning, John. Thanks for joining the Jeff and Bill Show.
Hey, good morning. Oh, thanks. Thanks for having me this morning. Really appreciate it.
You get a very cool job. Get to ride on Air Force One. All right, tell us what today is all about.
Well, today the focus is on the U.S. economy. In fact, in a little less than an hour, the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent will be part of a press briefing to talk about some of the economic successes from the administration's point of view that have occurred during the president's first 100 days in office. Yesterday, we heard from Tom Homan, the border czar. He was talking about border security issues, and the White House used that as a big success. And then this evening, the president will do a campaign celebration. That's what they're calling it. It's a celebration of the president's first 100 days. He'll talk about some of the successes that the president has had. That will be to an audience in Macomb County, Michigan. And as you point out, I'll be on that trip today. And, you know, it's, I think, something that the president has looked forward to for a few weeks now, leading up to the campaign rally that will take place in Macomb County.
That voice you're hearing is John Decker, White House correspondent. This has been a fast-moving administration. Give us a sense about how they feel the first 100 days went.
Well, they feel very good about the first 100 days, certainly on some issues more than others. I think the biggest issue in which they do get good poll numbers has to do with border security. That was the focus yesterday. You know, you look at polls and they give the president good marks on that issue of border security and illegal immigration. I think the challenge for the president has to do with his tariffs policy. That's the big unknown. We saw the reaction by financial markets. We saw a real dip in financial markets because of concern that it could lead to a slowdown in the U.S. economy. It could lead to an uptick in inflation. So that's the big unknown, you know, what that policy in particular, what its impact will have over the course of the next few months.
Yeah, that's where my questions lie, too, because we had a good first term with him regarding the economy up until COVID took place. The tariffs have seemed to kind of put us all over the place. And then you had Canada yesterday electing a liberal government. So, you know, how do they talk about the economy in a positive way from your perspective?
Well, that's a good question. You know, I think that I received something in my inbox just within the past hour talking about various metrics, barometers in which they say the economy is doing well. They talk about gas prices, energy prices down since the president took office. They talk about interest rates ticking down, and that obviously impacts mortgage rates. And that's, again, since the president took office. But having said that, you know, just last week we saw the pace of home sales in the month of March, the lowest pace of home sales since 2009. And I think that has everything to do with the fact that mortgage rates are really high right now, and consumers, those looking for a new home, are concerned as it relates to the high mortgage rates that we're seeing right now, at least historically where they are right now, you know, around 7% for a 30-year fixed-rate mortgage.
That's John Decker, NBC News White House correspondent. You've got one of the coolest jobs because you get to ride with the president on Air Force One. John Decker, what's one of the coolest things about Air Force One the average person doesn't know? What's one of the cool perks because you get to ride on the special plane?
Well, I don't know if you know this or don't know this, but, you know, to me, I'm always impressed with the meals that you get on Air Force One. Really impressive, solid meals. I mean, I've been in business class on commercial airlines, but being on Air Force One and eating and maybe even having a glass of wine is really special and never gets old.
Oh, so cool.
Oh, that's so
John
cool.
Decker, White House correspondent, traveling with President Trump as he celebrates his 100 days in office. John, thanks for taking time to join the Jeff and Bill Show
Yeah,
this morning.
thanks. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
Speaking of 100 days into Trump's second term, the country is anything but quiet, from mass deportations to tax cuts, Supreme Court fights to battling the deep state. Trump is charging full speed ahead. But is it progress or pandemonium? It's report card time on the Jeff and Bill Show. We want to hear from you. Give us a call, 303-696-1971. 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line 720-819-5115. What grade would you give Donald Trump? A to F on his second term start. Has he delivered, or has the chaos returned with a vengeance? We want to hear from you. Speaking of chaos, now is time for Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Good morning. It's 37 degrees. Let's get the chaos going here. Mostly clear in Denver. Just gorgeous morning outside. Expecting a high of 67 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story.
Which I was there. I watched in person. I was there along with Taylor Swift. How did that work out? How did that one work out?
NFL champion Eagles at the White House Monday. There's a culture shift even in the wokety-woke NFL. Looked like about half the team was there. That's good news. DJT getting ready to mark 100 days in office.
White House correspondent John Decker is traveling with the president and believes Trump will be taking a victory lap.
I think it's a celebration. The president and his team believe that this has been one of the most consequential first 100 days of any White House in recent memory.
Decker also thinks the president will lean heavily into his work at the border. The rally will take place at Macomb Community College in Warren, north of Detroit. I'm Tammy Trujillo.
Look at that. John was just on the show with Jeff and Billy.
Dude, we're big time, man.
You are.
We got guys giving us a call as they get on to Air Force One to enjoy some wine.
I knew he was going to say wine and the food on Air Force One because, I mean, when you go on charters, that is the greatest thing. When I used to cover the Cowboys, the Dallas Cowboys were the greatest.
Yeah.
I used to go on all the charters, and I'll never forget it. The candy bars that they put on I never ate them, of course, but they were as big as baseball bats. We had steak, we had mashed potatoes, and everything that you would expect on a high class flight, and that's what Air Force One, I'm sure.
Really, it's not a Frontier Airlines box meal that you pay $25 for.
Box, yeah,
includes some crackers and almonds.
That was what you got before you got on the plane. It was beautiful. I knew he was going to answer that with the meals. That's great. All right, so 47 weighing in on the huge DEA bust at the club in the Springs. Trump called the raid a victory, but warned that without strong action, the country could face a surge in crime. The Sinaloa cartel is being linked to the drugs found in the nightclub. According to Denver 7 Investigates, federal authorities have arrested one person associated with the foreign terrorist organization. Scott Jennings on CNN says DJT is not going to panic over all these fake polls. He's making ballsy economic maneuvers, and he'll end up winning big.
So I think if you see some of this movement, some of these announcements, I think that will help with the economic numbers. I don't really think Trump is the kind of person who gets freaked out by the polls, frankly. I think he's quite confident in what he's doing. I don't sense a lot of panic over at the White House, and I don't really think they think the 100-day mark, which is arbitrary, we talk about it, but it's arbitrary to them, is something that they were looking at as a deadline for any of this to be done.
Last month, some people freaked out about a story about DHL. This morning, DHL is going to resume shipments from from other countries worth more than $800 to the U.S. Takes a little time. Just pump the brakes a little. And then there's J.D. Pritzker, governor of Illinois, comparing the U.S. to Nazi Germany.
The dangers that we saw in Nazi Germany, especially in the earliest days of Nazi Germany, are the dangers that we need to react to now. If we don't, things will get much, much worse. And so we've got to raise alarm bells to everybody. It's a 5-alarm fire, everyone. It's time to step out of your comfort zone and step out into the streets and speak up and make your voices heard.
That is a crook who preys on ignorance right there. Police in Thornton looking for a man who allegedly tried to kidnap a teen girl Monday morning. The 15-year-old was reportedly walking near Thornton Middle School just before 11:30 when a man attempted to grab her. Police say the abduction attempt was caught on video, allowing them to release a photo of the alleged suspect. He's described as white, between 5'8" and 5'9", with a slim to medium build and blonde hair. He may also be driving or riding in a red sedan with a white bumper. The NBA championship trophy will be in Denver today. A bus carrying the Larry O'Brien trophy will be at the Union Station beginning at noon today. The bus is part of the NBA's road trip to the trophy tour, which allows fans to take photos with the trophy and take part in other activities and giveaways. The bus will be open until 8, which is the scheduled tip-off time for tonight's Game 5 playoff series between the Nuggets and the Clippers this evening at the arena. Series tied at 2. Last night, the Avalanche and the Stars in their series.
Floats wide. As Nichushkin was tied up by Granlund. Back the other way comes Hintz. Driving the net, Rantanen. He's got it! Score! Against his old team! Rantanen for the first time in this series!
And Dallas wins it 6-2 the final. Stars lead it 3-2. Avs with their backs against the wall. Florida authorities say the driver of a boat that crashed into a ferry Sunday evening, killing one, is cooperating. No charges have been filed at this point in the investigation. News brought to you by Lair Fireplace and Patio, Denver's premier source for everything fireplace, patio, and grills. Locally owned and operated since 1954. Online at lairfireplacepatio.com. 36 in North Glen, 35 in Littleton, 37 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue. It's Tuesday. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Your 710 5-day forecast will get some clearing skies as we start off our Tuesday morning. Morning temperatures in the upper 30s, afternoon highs lower and mid-60s. Just a slight chance for a late afternoon or evening shower or thunderstorm, otherwise partly cloudy and lows low to mid-40s. Wednesday, upper 60s, low 70s. A new cold front will bring increasing clouds, showers and thunderstorms Wednesday night through midday Thursday. Weather brought to you by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather. Schedule your free no-obligation roof inspection at roofingcolorado.com. Meteorologist Don Watzel in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Well, how would you grade Donald Trump's first 100 days in office? I've got a poll up on X. Got a few hours left to vote. Almost 1,000 votes at this point, Bill. 60% giving him an A. About 30% giving him a B. Roughly 9% a C. And 3.5% an F. Where would you fall along the lines?
Oh, I'd probably... Well, passing would be tough. Probably somewhere in the D range, honestly, is probably where I'd land because I understand that a lot of this is perception and worldview as far as what you put priorities on. But outside of immigration, I have a difficult time pointing to a lot of successes and or really fulfilled promises so far. And so that's kind of for me, that I will give him points based on immigration, and it would depend on how much I'm going to weight that. And that's really pretty much it. Outside of that, I don't see much. So that's just personally.
How much do you think the grade reflects a reaction against the previous administration?
Oh, yeah.
Because so much of it was bad, and you felt like you were being lied to, right? Like,
well, here's the thing, though, is do you believe that where you sit politically colors your view of so much of it being bad?
100%.
Yeah,
yes,
so I would say
course.
that there are probably people that we can find with D's behind their names down in the Golden Dome of the Capitol that would not share the same starting point for where you are. So that's part of it. So when you start with last administration being so bad, there's going to be portions of this country that won't agree with that.
Do you think, though, that there are still Democrats that look back at Biden's administration and go, that was great?
Yeah, I do.
Really?
Yeah, and here's the reason why. The stuff that Trump's been doing, the tariffs, the NATO, the whole other stuff, that's the issue, is you're looking at what's going on as far as the economy, and people are going, well, this sucks. I mean, you may not have been a big fan of where Biden was and or doing, but this can be kind of a nightmare. I mean, people that are looking at retirement counts or in retirement or close to retirement have got to be just pulling their hair out, depending on where you have your investments, because you can lose tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars over what has been happening. So that's part of it, is the uncertainty. Where we're going, I mean, that's the part of it. So, yeah, that's the thing, is I understand there's going to be filters as far as what was good and what was bad, but... Yeah, and that's part of the grade, is how those grades are going to be given is going to be largely dependent upon politics as well, and that's fair. That's totally fair.
Talking about Donald Trump's 100 days in office, he is heading to Michigan today. He's going to do a campaign-style rally in order to celebrate. I want to hear from you. The economy, education, tariffs, foreign policy, energy, Israel, Ukraine, Bitcoin. I will say... I think he's done fantastic. A, if not A+. And the only reason I hesitate just a little bit on the A+ is where's the Epstein list? I still want to know where that is. We were supposed to get that. That's kind of waiting out there. But when it comes to reforming the federal government, I am incredibly impressed with what he's done. Interesting article in The Atlantic yesterday titled, I Run the Country and the World. And here's one of my absolute favorite lines in the whole thing, okay?
Yeah.
They're talking about how Donald Trump's second term is so different than his first term, and the reasons why, and the 4 years in the wilderness that prepared him for what he was going to achieve in his second term. But they say he's essentially, his team is running like the velociraptors who figured out how to work the doorknobs.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
so. Because if you compare it to the first term, right? They come in, they don't really know what's going on, and he's battling constantly within his own team. And they detail this in the article. Reince Priebus, John Kelly, Rex Tillerson, all these folks that he's constantly having to push back against that feel like they need to control him. They need to put him in his lane. Donald Trump doesn't know how Washington works. It's our job to help him through this. And it became a constant series of battles. And in fact, there ended up being two major factions in his first term, the kind of MAGA Steve Bannon faction, and then the John Kelly, Reince Priebus, old school Republican faction, which shockingly, is a little bit like the fight happening within the Colorado Republican Party right now.
True, very true.
That happened within his first term. Now he goes away for 4 years. He comes back, second term, and he's kind of figured it out. They say day one of his second term, the product of weeks of meticulous planning was all about, in the Trump team's words, shock and awe. Flood the system. Everything's already planned out. We're going to do these executive orders. Now, there's a critique, which I think is a very fair critique in The Atlantic, that while Trump's expansion of the executive branch is a lot like FDR's, FDR was able to solidify it via his work in Congress.
Yeah, and we've talked about this, that I make the statement that Trump needs to try to be president and stop trying to be king. That he is trying to govern through executive order and fiat, and that's not going to work because it will all be undone by the next administration. So if you're listening to the Jeff and Bill show and you believe that Donald Trump deserves a high B to an A score, you should be afraid that they can't get any of this through the legislature. They can't codify any of this into law, meaning it's just a bunch of piece of papers with signatures on it, and the next person that has a D behind their name in the White House can undo all of it just as fast. They could have all of those executive orders ready to go on day one, and they can undo all of this. And all it's going to take is a signature on a piece of paper. And so you really got to work at this. The other day, Trump was even floating the idea of possibly even vetoing his own big, beautiful bill if he didn't have all the stuff that he wanted in it. So that's going to really hamstring what's going on. And I'd be super curious if you're in the audience, 303-696-1971, 303-696-1971, what am I missing? What am I missing about the greatness of Trump's first 100 days? I don't even give him a passing score. He's at a D for me. He wouldn't be moving on to the next class. So that's where I'm going with him.
Jay from Louisville saying, worst president of my lifetime.
Yeah, so I want to know, what am I missing? Yeah, what am I missing?
Worse than Joe Biden. Come on, Joe Biden wasn't even there. Somebody else. And the fact that doesn't offend people like Jay from Louisville to the point where you literally had a shadow presidency and somebody else running the executive branch, versus now you have a guy that's willing to go out and face the media all the time. And we look at the changes he's making. He's reducing the size of the federal government. He's tackling the national debt. He's actually closed the border and showcased you didn't need to go through Congress like Joe Biden said we needed to do in order to do it. It was all a scam under the Biden presidency.
But is he accomplishing those things that you ticked off? Tackling the national debt? Is he? Because
it's doing a lot better than the other team would be doing.
But is he tackling the national debt? Because last time we saw the numbers going up. It's going to be going up under him, and his tax cuts and Jobs Act extension is going to increase the national deficit. Part of the big beautiful bill is raising the debt ceiling. They have baked into the system the fact that our national debt is going to go up.
I would love to see. Hey, I would love to see him take on Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and defense spending. Maybe they'll get there, but when it comes to cutting out a bunch of baloney out of this federal government, that sure as heck wasn't going to happen under any Democrat president. Donald Trump, Elon Musk, they're at least tackling some of the waste, fraud, and abuse.
Are they?
Yes.
What are the numbers they have right now? They're talking about they've gone from $2 trillion in cuts and savings down to $100 million. That's ridiculous. That is ridiculous. As far as underachievement.
I just watched
legendary.
I just watched 60 Minutes do this huge thing about all these cuts at National Institute of Health and how people are going to die of cancer and Alzheimer's. And then I hear, well, no, they're not actually making any cuts.
No, the issue is the amount. Because and that's what I'm pointing at. Is that Elon?
I thought they were making all these cuts about people having cancer and Alzheimer's. They're all going to die now as a result of it.
The 100 million, the 100 million can be. The 100 million is going to be significant. Absolutely, it is. But is it in the grand scheme of things, as far as the impact of the $100 million cuts can be very significant on the ground as far as people's lives and research and other things like that. But as the ground scheme of the budget, it can be very ineffectual because of the size of it. And again, Elon went from 2 million on the campaign trail to 1 million after inauguration, and now he's down to 100 million. He tried to float 150 million. Yeah, he floated 100 million the other day. Yeah, they don't have the savings. that they've been promising. That's the issue. They haven't found it. And at the most they can find is $150 million. That's it. From $1 trillion is what we were promised.
Doge publishes a running total of its estimated savings on its website. This is from the BBC, which stood at $160 billion the last time the site was updated.
Yeah, but the numbers are wrong.
On the 20th of April.
Yeah, but the numbers are wrong. They miscount things, and that's been documented. They have stuff on there that doesn't count. They have stuff that is miscounted. What they've even done, this is how far it goes, is Doge used to put in the contracts and the agencies they were cutting. They've pulled that back. They don't release that information anymore because everybody's been disproving the numbers they've been floating. They don't have that much.
But Bill, I'm hearing, well, they're not cutting that much. And then I watched 60 Minutes, and we are literally all going to die of cancer as a result of the cuts they're making.
Yeah, it's again.
Which is it?
Yeah, no, both things can be true. Both things can be true that if they don't have a significant amount of cuts that are going to lower the deficit and our debt, they can still cut in areas in which it would cut down cancer research and other things like that. Both things can be true. Both things can absolutely be true at the same time. You can turn around and say, we think that our company is going to be making this chemical, and this chemical may contain some carcinogens, and you can look at the idea of, we need to cut back on the budget because our company is overspending, and we're going to cut out the research on carcinogens, but that can also not be a significant number to save enough money in the deficit. Look at the idea of what the state was going through. Colorado was going through it as well. Same thing, that you were getting all these cuts that were felt very, very personally on a number of levels, but as a total number, some of those cuts were
in order for that to be the case, then you'd have to see increased spending in other areas. Where are we seeing increased spending?
And I don't understand what you mean by that. What do you mean by we need to see increased spending?
So if you're saying we're cutting all these areas, right, that are really going to affect people, like cancer research and Alzheimer's research, and this big piece. I watched this yesterday at 60 Minutes.
Yeah.
It's like the sky is falling. We're all going to die because of these cuts to the NIH.
Yeah, that's 60 Minutes.
We're cutting one, but then the cuts aren't that big, but then we don't have an increase in spending. What?
No, it's and again, I'm
not
here.
Why they're cutting and we're not?
I am not part of CBS, nor am I here to defend their reporting.
Yeah.
And so what they're talking about is in these silos, in these areas, the cuts will be felt significantly by these populations.
But you just told me the total cuts from Doge are $100 million. That's nothing. That's like
hang on a sec. That's not. Hang on. But what I just said is, in those areas that are being cut, they are going to be felt significantly. If you are someone that is working on cancer research, if you're someone that has cancer and they cut a significant portion of the cancer research, that is going to impact you. That's going to be far more significant than if they cut farm subsidies if you're not a farmer. That's the issue, is if you're in that population, it is significant for you. But the total number
But no, Bill, I'm
based on
looking
a total
right now.
budget?
It's news. National Institute grant awards plummeted $2.3 billion under President Trump. And then you tell me, but we only cut $100 million.
Yeah, but those awards, that could be something. Again, I'd have to look at what the number is. That could be stuff that is promised in the future that isn't actually going to end up being spent. That's not necessarily a cut because you're not spending the money right now. If I promise to pay you $50,000 over the course of the next 3 years, and then I go ahead and you've gotten 10,000 of that, but I don't pay the other side, that's not necessarily a cut. It's just it's reduced spending per se, but it's not necessarily a cut to the program. It depends on how they're doing it. But again, what we were promised is $1 trillion, and we're cheering $150 billion at most, and it's probably closer to $100 million.
I'm just looking at $2.3 billion, and then that's just NIH. Well, what about USAID? And all the cuts that took place there.
Yeah,
so,
but many of those cuts,
I'm hearing two stories at the same time. One, Doge didn't really cut all that much. Ha, ha, ha. Elon Musk was this big political failure. And then, oh my goodness, the sky's falling. Look at all the cuts. We're all going to die of cancer and Alzheimer's as a result of it.
Yeah, but that's not my premise. So that's fine. And that's going to be CBS's. But that's the issue is, these cuts are going to be felt by those populations. Yes, absolutely. And some of those are bad. But, as a total number, it's not that significant. It's not. We're not getting anywhere close to it, what Doge promised or Elon promised. And all I'm wondering is, and that's okay. We can sit there and go, they couldn't do it. They couldn't find it. The other thing we're not seeing is the fraud. Where are the fraud people? We haven't seen a single thing.
They're prosecuting that. Pam Bondi has said it's definitely there, and they're working through the process right now.
Yeah, but has she announced anything? Any investigations, any indictments, anything? I mean,
yeah,
anything
she
at
said
all.
Investigations are going to play.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
How's that working out so far? But again,
I think they're doing them.
Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Because so far, the information that Doge has released, we haven't seen much fraud at all, if any. And that's part of the problem. So let's see what happens. And that's the issue, is if we're going to cut this through fraud. Now, waste And, priorities, yeah, we can talk about that. But fraud was the sell, that it was bogus. That, Doge came out and said we had all those old people on Social Security. Nope, that wasn't true. Not true at all. So there are a number of times in which Doge has come out and announced things that happened and they weren't true. So that should be an issue. And if you're worried about, again, the reason I bring it up is if you're worried about the deficit in the budget, and that's what we were screaming about for the last 4 years from the conservatives, it's not being followed through on your budget priorities now. Where are all the cuts? Where is all this? Where to go?
Where are all the cuts? I just laid out the cuts.
Yeah.
I just laid out the cuts. And 60 Minutes did a whole thing about how terrible the sky is falling because of all these cuts.
Yeah.
That's where the cuts are taking place. It's a heck of a lot better under Trump than it would have been under Biden, where this type of stuff would have just kept going. The government just grows and grows and grows and grows and continues to fund totally
cancer research.
Those types of things that are
cancer research. We need that.
But you just told me we're not saving. We're not saving much. So I think it's just political maneuvering. Donald Trump is delivering on what he promised. He's affecting the size of government. He's shut down the border, which didn't require an act of Congress, by the way. So all the Democrats that were running around saying that was necessary, not true. I think he's improved foreign policy. I think we're closer to peace with Ukraine than we ever were under Joe Biden. I give him an A.
Didn't he just have to go on his own social media site and tell Vladimir to stop bombing Ukraine and shooting missiles? Didn't he just do that?
And Russia
Vladimir?
Accepted a 3-day ceasefire.
Didn't they? Did stop Vladimir? Yeah.
For 3 days it has.
Okay, yeah, sure.
But Joe Biden wasn't even calling Russia. Wasn't even talking to Russia.
Yeah. Because,
so how are we closer to peace under Biden?
Again, the issue being is, again, I'm not certain that we should be going towards peace. I think that's a mistake because Donald Trump's peace plan is to give Russia what it's captured. No, I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay with Russia going into a sovereign nation and taking land. I'm not okay with any sovereign nation doing that. And that's just universal. I don't care. I do not care about that. And the fact that we're operating off a premise of you can keep it. No, I'm not okay with that personally. That's just me. And I've been consistent on that. I think it's a huge, tremendous mistake.
Would you be willing to risk World War III in order to get a 20-mile chunk of land back out of Russia's hands?
I disagree with the idea of risking World War III. I think that's a false dichotomy. I think you're only putting two choices on the table, as if either we need to make peace with Russia or World War III. I disagree with that. That's a false premise. It's a false dichotomy.
We'll just continue to spend money there. So the third option then is just a detente like we have now, where we just engage in trench warfare and sit there and continue to fund this thing?
Give them more help. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And push Russia back. Because so far...
Oh, you think Russia's just going to be like, oh, okay.
Yeah, because we've had a degradation of more than 1/3 of their fighting forces and their military capabilities over the course of this. Yes, it has been a wonderful investment of money.
They have nuclear weapons.
Yeah, and
so we're just going to push them back and continue to degrade their troop size, and then they'll just go, okay.
Yeah, until they get back to their borders, yeah. Because nuclear weapons aren't an offensive weapon anymore as far as foreign policy. They're defensive. But that's the point. You've just degraded their military to the point, push them back, and you don't think
they're just going to sit on those things?
In their own country.
You're willing to risk Vladimir Putin just sitting on his
In their own country. Yes, yeah. Because Vladimir's
not... why would you just limit it to his own country? Why wouldn't he strike somewhere else?
No, but the issue is that he took over Ukraine, and you push him back inside his own borders, and what's he going to do?
Going. Why not march all the way to Moscow?
I've never argued for that. If you want to argue about that,
why
we
not?
can. No, because it's a sovereign country. I wouldn't take over the country. No, Ukraine has no business taking over Russia.
Borders change all the time.
Again, this is my plan. This is my position.
Yeah.
Ukraine has no position taking over Russia. But can Ukraine have their own land back? Yes, they should. Yes, absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
Lots of text messages coming in this morning.
Give us a call, 303-696-1971. Yep. What am I missing? What am I wrong about? There are a lot of text messages about me being wrong. What am I wrong about?
Bill, what would you say? Non-passing? D? You'd give Trump a D.
Yeah, I'd give him a D. That's probably where I am. And the only thing that's saving him, in my mind, is I appreciate the border. And I might be able to be convinced, it'd be hard for me to get to a C-. It'd be really hard because basically I see immigration alone. But I'm up to the idea and persuasion. If someone gives us a call, 303-696-1971, persuade me. Tell me why I need to give them a higher grade. I'm curious about that, how you're seeing it, and why am I so wrong?
5556 A+ to Donald Trump. I agree. A to A+ from me. 8913 B+. But Bill's right about executive orders, but it's almost impossible for any president to work with Congress because they're so partisan. and only care about their own power and position. 8913. Can Donald Trump solidify what he's done in his first 100 days by getting Congress to act, and how important is that? Join the conversation, 303-696-1971. Text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line at 720-819-5115. It's report card day for the president's first 100 days. How would you grade him? You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. We are debating Donald Trump's first 100 days. It's the day he gets his report card. What grade would you give him? For Bill, it's a D. For me, it's an A. Borderline in A+. I just want to see the Epstein list. That's all. Let's go to the phone lines. Don and Aurora. Good morning, Don. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Good morning.
Morning, guys. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
We'll see.
Well, we'll try not to screw it up. So what grade would you give Donald Trump after 100 days?
B minus.
Oh, nice. Now, why? Explain it to us. What would be, if you had a little comment card, like we had in grade school, and they said, this is what you're doing in class, what would be filled in that comment card?
I agree with his objectives. I don't agree with the execution. I think it's been a little too chaotic, and I definitely think it has spooked a lot of people.
And how much do you attribute that chaos to Trump or to these progressive judges that are doing nationwide injunctions from a district court?
Oh, I definitely lay it solidly on Trump. Let me back up a little. I've been a casual Trump watcher since he was married to his first wife, and he's always ran things with a bit of chaos. You can do that in a development in the development business. You can do that. You can't do that in the federal government. You have to bring other people from the other side of the aisle, and if you want anything long term to be done, just sitting there signing executive orders isn't going to accomplish anything long term. I think a good example is Doge. Doge had some good ideas. I think they really underestimated the amount of resistance they were going to face. I'd rather not go into any detail, but I have a friend of mine who's a federal employee who took the deferred registration program, and just the stuff that he was reading that was coming out of the unions.
So again, you say that Donald Trump's acting recklessly. He's pushing things aggressively, but then you say that he's run against all these problems, which would reflect the deep state.
I wouldn't say it recklessly. It's just he doesn't think like most people. He really has an authoritarian mindset. A really good there's a guy on YouTube who really pointed this out. That Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin very much see the world the same way.
I would agree.
And he just doesn't. It's not very well thought through. But
again, Don, you're pointing out though that the problem he's run up against is, Doge, for instance, didn't anticipate how problematic it was going to be within these Washington D.C. institutions. But then you blame Trump for those problems.
But couldn't Doge just be wrong? I mean, in number of cases, we've seen the stuff they come out with just to be wrong, that they didn't know what they were doing. And so it's not that they came up against the deep state. It's not the deep state's fault that these young kids didn't understand COBOL as far as a program language and came out talking about a whole bunch of old people that weren't receiving Social Security checks. That's not the deep state making them unaware of what the programming language is or asking the questions about it.
You don't think they've run up against any institutional challenges?
No, I didn't say that. What I said is that it's you presented it as, oh, well, Doge would do this if not for the deep state. No. They've been stepping on ricks themselves over and over and over and over again. And I understand the idea about having the national injunctions. Again, it was never a big deal for anybody that was a conservative or a liberal for a judge to issue a national injunction until now with this president at this moment.
Because they're doing so many of them.
Maybe it's because
it's a weaponized use of the judiciary.
And here's the thing, though, is you've come to the conclusion that what Trump is doing is okay, so this is a weaponized use. It may not be okay. The executive actions he's taking may be extra constitutional, may not be within his purview. Some of this is like when Congress funds a department, that's law. You can't just through executive order change that. And there are rules around that. And it is Congress that dismantles those entities, and it's Congress that dismantles those budgets. It can't be done through executive order, and that's where these injunctions and these lawsuits come from. And the other part, though, is an injunction has to be national. It has to, in order for our judiciary to function, any time of injunction, because what you don't need is a ruling that happens in California, a ruling that happens in Florida, a ruling that happens in Massachusetts, a ruling that happens in Washington, D.C., all with different conclusions, and then telling a major court like the Supreme Court, fix it all out, fix it. All these different rulings are all, and that's why you have an injunction, is they say, at this moment, we are going to have an injunction, we're going to stop the other procedures, everything else, and we're going to figure out this rule, and then we move on. It presents the rest of the judiciary getting knotted up and making it untenable. That's the reason. I mean, it's completely and totally logical.
Bill, this has been a tool of the left to throw wrenches into Trump's agenda. This is no different than the efforts to impeach him in the first term, where they're just drawing up anything they possibly can to try to interfere with him.
Hey, Don, you remember when they went when Joe Biden issued those executive orders about the student loan forgiveness? The Republicans ran to courts right away to get those enjoined, didn't they? They started all those lawsuits. Yeah, so
but
same
the
thing.
sheer number is totally different. Don, I appreciate the call. We got to get to You Choose the News.
Don.
We're going to continue this into the next hour as well. Feel free to give us a call. It's Report Card Day for Donald J. Trump's 100 days. For me, it's an A. A+. For Bill, it's a D. What do you think? 303-696-1971. You got You Choose the News. Coming up, you're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS. My report card comment would be, stop eating paste.
and I are going to take a moment from full phone lines and lots of text messages about Donald Trump's first 100 days for a little bit of levity with You Choose the News.
Yes, it's that time of the morning where we get to play America's favorite fake radio news game show, You Choose the News. Yeah, you know how this works. I scour the interwebs for mere moments this morning to find dumb stories about us humans, give them even more ridiculous headlines so that we can play this fake radio news game show. Why, oh why would we be this irresponsible with valuable KNUS airtime? Because nobody in charge has any idea we are doing this. They don't wake up until 7 o'clock. They don't show up in terms like 8:30 or 9. So nobody that has any decision-making power can stop us from doing this. So it's a big secret. Shh, do not share or all of our fun here ends. And we will blame you and put you on blast. Okay, here we go. Now, Blake Olson is joining us from the news department. Jeff Hunt is in the studio. Your headlines this morning, gentlemen. Headline number 1, I'll tumble for ya. Headline number 2, outsourcing, now illegal. Headline number 3, smiles, everybody smiles. And headline number 4, how do you lose something that big?
Let's do, how do you lose something that big?
How in the heck do you lose something that big? Recently, the U.S. Navy said, hey, where'd that F-18 go? It was here just a minute ago. I know it was right over there, and now, what the hell happened to it? Well, unfortunately, it went splash. It fell overboard from the USS Harry S. Truman. Yes, while the F-18 Super Hornet was being towed, the boat made an unscheduled hard turn to evade some fire from the Houthi rebels, and the fighter jet fell overboard. Sploosh into the water.
Wow.
Yes, all personnel are accounted for. One sailor sustains a minor injury. Basically, they were involved in towing it to the hangar bay, and they lost control of the aircraft at the same time that they were swinging the boat around, and so the thing went into
At that point,
into the
is it first come, first get type thing?
That's the thing. Yeah, that's the problem is they've got to get under the water because, people are going to go after there, and especially its proximity to Iran.
Yeah.
Iran's going to try to get a hold of those electronics.
Those great subs, the
yeah,
Iranians
so
have.
they're going to go ahead. Well, even just divers, so see what they can do with it. So, or at least drones. So we'll see what we can do. But they're going to have to rescue some of that stuff. But yes, the F-18 fell off the boat. If you're the captain of that specific aircraft carrier, your performance review, that's going to be a little difficult. How many planes did you lose? Well, you mean other than the one that fell off the boat? Doesn't go well. Okay, now, Blake, your choice, sir. Headline, I'll tumble for you. Outsourcing now illegal, or smiles, everybody smiles.
I'll tumble for you.
I'll tumble for you. Tumble for you. Yes, you understand. That is Culture Club. I'll tumble for you. And here we're going to talk about the tumbling from Miss Deborah Cobb. It was a cool May afternoon back in 2002, and she's sharing her story. She was 19 at the time, because this is a little bit of a cautionary tale. She said she had a habit of doing cartwheels. She was a young gymnast. Well, she decided one day at the beach she wanted to do as many cartwheels as she could in a row. She did 13 and collapsed into giggles afterwards, and that's when her friend ran over to her to help her up, and she realized something strange. I can't actually see my friend's face. Her face was a blur. Her peripheral vision seemed normal, but when she would focus directly on any items in front of her, there were no details. It seemed that she could just relax and she wasn't in pain, but then she began to panic when she wandered along a shopping street later in the day and found it difficult to even read simple street signs. By the next morning, she was mostly blind.
Wow.
She had a diagnosis that what happened is the blood vessels in the central part of the retina responsible for detailed vision had burst. It was small, like a tiny ink drop. It was central to her vision, and it took her about 3 to 4 months to get all of her vision back, simply from doing cartwheels.
I believe that.
I know.
Wow. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely ridiculous. Okay, Jeff, final choice. Outsourcing now illegal, or smiles, everybody smiles?
Smiles.
Smiles, yes. Mr. Rourke says this is just a fantasy, but anger is erupted inside of St. Peter's Basilica online because a number of people visiting the Pope are taking selfies, saying, look at me and the dead guy, and then posting it online. People even bringing selfie sticks. And a lot of the Catholics are going, ooh, to hell with you. Get behind me, Satan. Yes.
It's like those guys at the grave.
Yes.
You don't take a selfie.
Yeah.
All right, you're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
KNUS.
It is 7 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Tuesday, April 29th, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show. News Talk 710, KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights and hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Congratulations, you're waking up in the greatest country in history. Donald Trump's been your president for 100 days in his second term. What do you think? Are you happy? Are you thrilled? Would you give him a passing grade? I give him an A+. I hesitated there a little bit because where's the Epstein list? I want to know about that. Billy, willing to give him a D.
A D.
Not quite a passing grade.
And I'm grading on a curve. Immigration is the high point. Other than that, I don't see anything to celebrate. But that's me. And I want to know why I'm wrong. 303-696-1971. Got a couple of phone lines waiting for us. But there is a free one right now, 303.
Yep.
Yeah, 696-1971.
Slide in there.
Yeah, why am I wrong about giving Trump a D?
We'll get to these phone calls and more, but now it's time for Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Hey, good morning. Tuesday, 38 degrees, sunny in Denver, expecting a high of 67 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story, DJT on Truth Social this morning, quote, 100 very special days, make America great again. So the president, once again, getting the message out early across all media and kicking off the day, complimenting his team on day 100. Trump with 142 executive orders in the first 100 days. He will rally in Michigan today. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says the president is excited to return to the state. 47 weighed in on the huge DEA bust at the club in the Springs. Trump called the raid a victory, but warned that without strong action, the country could face a surge in crime. The Sinaloa cartel is being linked to the drugs found in the nightclub. According to Denver 7 Investigates, federal authorities have arrested one person associated with the foreign terrorist organization. One of the reasons we know that the borders, southern and northern, have to be closed tightly is fentanyl. Today is National Fentanyl Awareness Day.
White House correspondent.
Wrong one.
It was first observed 4 years ago by parents who lost their loved ones to drug overdoses. The goal is to remind everyone of the many deaths each year caused by fentanyl and to spread the word about naloxone, a medication that can reverse an opioid overdose. Progress has been made on bringing down the number of overdose deaths in recent years, but fentanyl is still the #1 killer. I'm Michael Kastner.
Pierre Poilievre, leader of Canada's Conservative Party, has lost his seat in Parliament. Bruce Fentjoy, the Liberal Party, wins. Mark Carney, elected Canada's Prime Minister, globalist. Canadians got their feelings hurt by DJT and they turned back to the lefties. The House of Representatives wants to protect Americans from deepfake and revenge pornography. Lawmakers on Monday overwhelmingly approved the Takedown Act, which provides protections for victims of non-consensual sexual image sharing and AI-generated pornography. The bill, championed by First Lady Melania Trump, now goes to DJT's desk. The Senate passed the measure in February. Doesn't look like the Real ID deadline will be extended this time. The Trump administration says all the states need to comply by May 7th, and that is the deadline, the May 7th deadline. Real ID is enhanced security driver's licenses that will need in order to board any domestic airline flight. So you'll need that. And the deadline, once again, is May 7th. All right, the NBA Championship Trophy in Denver today, right before tonight's series continues with the Clippers. The Larry O'Brien Trophy will be at Union Station beginning at noon. The bus is part of NBA's road trip to the Trophy Tour, which allows fans to take photos of the trophy and take part in other activities and giveaways. The bus will be there until 8 o'clock tonight. That's when the Clippers and the Nuggets tip off. And the Nuggets, that series tied at 2. In hockey last night, the Stars and the Avalanche.
Floats wide as Nichushkin was tied up by Granlund. Back the other way comes Hintz. Driving the net, Rantanen. He's got it! Score! Against his old team! Rantanen for the first time in this series!
6-2 Dallas wins it. Stars lead 3-2. Once again, the Avalanche with their backs against the wall. Can they come back to tie that series? 37 in Westminster, 36 in Centennial, 38 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue Tuesday. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Typical late April weather for Denver. Temperatures will be in the 60s today, partly cloudy. A couple of showers and thunderstorms this afternoon and evening. Temperatures will make the 60s, near 40 tonight with showers ending. Near 70 Wednesday, partly cloudy. A few showers and thunderstorms late. And then overnight and into the day on Thursday, showers likely, cooler Thursday with highs only in the mid to upper 50s. Weather sponsored by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather and schedule your free no-obligation roof inspection today at roofingcolorado.com. That's roofingcolorado.com. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. It's Donald Trump's first 100 days in office, second term. What do you think? How's he performed so well? Lots of issues to cover, everything from the economy, border security, tariffs, education, foreign policy, energy, Bitcoin. What about that Epstein list he was supposed to release? Let's go to the phone lines. Tony in Littleton, you need to grade the president. What's your grade for him?
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't be as generous as a curve on Billy's number. So instead, I know you're at an A or an A plus, but instead of, I'll take a different approach. Let's talk about the polls and why is he lower after 100 days than any other president in 70 years? And I'll focus on those issues that are bothering people. You know, he's upside down on the economy. He's upside down on his foreign policy, on Ukraine, on tariffs,
Tony,
on
I
his
don't care
attack
about
on the
polls.
courts.
Tell me about how he's done.
Well, the polls, I think, reflect that does reflect why so many people are upset with how he's performed in his first 100 days. You know, and you can't dismiss
Tony,
the polls
what do you
as
think
all
he's
being fake.
done? What do you think he's done that he hasn't promised to do? Or didn't deliver on something he promised about? I mean, I think he's done everything that he was promised he was going to do.
I think he's promised. He did make promises, and he's done most of what he promised. Now, I don't remember him saying he would attack colleges. I don't remember that. I don't remember him saying he would attack the courts. I don't remember him saying that. He's done mostly what he said he was going to do, but I think most people, as they say, take him seriously, but don't take him literally. Well, he's literally done what he said he was going to do. So the tariffs are affecting the country already, and they're going to hit us harder over the next few weeks. And now we're looking at a possible recession. Those things are bothering people. I'm just telling you what's bothering people. His attack on courts, colleges, and the press are unparalleled. And
you think that's new,
dangerous.
though? You think that's new?
Pardon me?
He did that in the first term. He dealt with that even when he wasn't in office. He had to deal with the courts and the press.
We'll take one issue. Let's take his suits against CBS and I think, a $20 billion lawsuit.
Nobody cares about those. He has delivered on exactly what he said he was going to do.
What do you mean nobody?
Polls.
Wait a minute. Stay with me on this one issue. Stay with me on the one issue. Jeff, stay with me on the one issue. We'll stay with this issue on the press. You say nobody cares about that. He's suing channels of the press to get them to give him popular coverage and to start limiting their negative coverage, and they're giant
for
lawsuits.
Defamation.
He sued CBS over them supposedly manipulating the interview,
which they did.
Which they did not. But they're paying him
but
anyways.
Tony, you think on the list of everything people are concerned about, a lawsuit against CBS makes that list?
No. It's bigger than that. But you're not. Your news is limited to whatever you're getting.
Tony, what I'm talking about though is he had a pretty clear sense of what he was going to do once he got into office, and he has delivered on that. And you even admit that it's turned out wrong.
Hey, it's turned out wrong. Look at his tariff. He's now telling the American public. Hey, hold on. He's telling the American public, I'm in constant negotiations with China to solve this issue. And China's put out a statement, said, we've had no conversation. I can almost quote it. We've had no conversation with the Trump administration regarding tariffs, number one. Number two, we will fight to the end on those tariffs. Number three, if he wants to talk, our door is open. In fact, they're not even calling him. He's got to call them. And he started telling the American public he's really close to having it solved. He's getting crushed in the tariff thing. He told that in that report you were referring to. He said he's already got 200 agreements around the world. That didn't happen either. He's lying to the American public, and you're believing it. I'm just telling you why his ratings are so low.
How many negotiations?
Why do you think they're so low?
Tony, how many negotiations has he agreed to with countries?
None.
You don't think he has any?
None. Not a one. Not a one. He was asked yesterday, what country? Oh, I'm not ready to tell that yet. Not one.
Yeah, Tony,
so
I just think you're wrong about that. Mexico,
you tell me,
Canada,
why do you think
he's had all these negotiations. You don't think he has one?
You tell me why he's got the lowest ratings of any president after 100 days. Why do you think it is? I was trying to tell you what the issues are, but they don't seem to matter. Why do you think he's got the lowest rating of any president?
I don't care about
after
polls.
100 days?
I don't think he cares about polls either. I think, to begin with, pretty much every time someone's done polls about Donald Trump, Tony, they're wrong. They were wrong in 16. They were wrong in 24.
You've rated him high along with Elon Musk.
Tony, look, the polls don't matter that much to me.
All right. Well, it's the reality.
Tony,
look at you've got Elon Musk rated high.
Donald Trump delivered on what he said he was going to do, and we're in the middle of a lot of these negotiations, and it's like getting mad that the house that's being built
are you going to refer to it as the greatest recession ever? Is that what you're going to do?
What's that?
If we go into a recession, are you going to then say, oh, my God, this is the greatest recession we've ever had?
No, we're reindustrializing the United States. And it might take a little bit of time to do that, guys.
Are we?
Then you
just talked about how
Elon Musk,
lowering
you've got
and
Elon
reducing
Musk
tariffs
rated right
so
up there with,
these car companies can come back to the United States.
You've got Elon Musk rated right up there with Trump. You think he's doing a terrific job.
Fantastic.
The facts are then why is his business, his car business just almost tipped over? That's a fact
he's putting time
that
to help
people
our
are not
government.
happy with Elon Musk.
Tony, you just did a bait and switch there. You asked me how he's doing with Doge, and then you said, well, he's not running his companies that well. Maybe
Billy already gave you what started you down the path on the numbers. The numbers that he's reported, he's not come close to what he said he was going to do. It did start at $2 trillion, then it went to 1. Then he said, and Billy, I'll correct this, $150 billion, and no, it's $50 billion. And it's across a whole lot of small programs like NIH.
So Tony, I'm gonna do the same thing I asked you, or I asked Bill about this. Are all these protests then about massive cuts coming to the federal government a lie?
The damage he's done is on the fringe. You can do a lot of, like colleges. They're not the public is not happy what he's doing to the colleges. That they don't believe that's a good idea that Donald Trump tries to run the colleges and that he's cut all the research that they're doing. That's devastating. Right here,
so
in
Tony,
this,
you're doing the
our
same
state,
thing. You're doing the
Health,
same thing
UC
that Bill
Health.
did
Get
during the
somebody
first
from
hour.
UC Health and tell them how
all these
concerned they
cuts
are.
are terrible. What he's doing to
What's
these
that?
colleges are terrible. But then, actually, when I ask you about the cuts, you go, "Well, they're not that bad." What Elon Musk?
No, I did not say that.
Political
Jeff,
games, Tony.
That's not what I said. That's not what I said. The cuts that they've made from a dollar standpoint are de minimis relative to what Musk promised and what he's told people, but the places he's cut, the fringe places that he's cut, are serious cuts. The hospital,
Tony,
our
there's
own hospital
never a
system,
cut
UC
that you
Health,
guys are going to agree with.
is running scared for the money that they're losing.
Government. Every dollar is so critical to the federal government.
But think about what you're talking about, though. $50 billion in cuts to fringe, and they're about ready to raise the debt by $4.5 trillion. $4.5 trillion through this tax cut.
Because
so can you see the difference between $50 billion in savings and then add on $4.5 trillion in tax cuts?
Tony, you believe that the money belongs to the government, not to the people.
I asked you straight away question. What's the use of all that he's done to whack $50 billion, and you're not even flinching at the $4.5 trillion in extra tax cut money, the debt to increase by that amount? Doesn't that freak you out?
No, because I think you misunderstand how businesses grow. Tony, it's about revenue that comes into the government, not taxes. Right.
So
hold on. When you cut taxes and you empower governments or businesses to grow, they produce more revenue. That comes in part to the government. You believe you're going to tax your way into prosperity and reducing the debt, and it's never going to happen, Tony.
Then at least let's acknowledge the fact that trickle-down economics that you've talked about, that's what you're talking about, that's failed 3 times. 3 times. It failed during Donald Trump's first term.
Socialism has failed every time.
You're reverting to socialism. That's not even the debate here. The debate on the table is: does the $4.5 trillion in tax cuts is that going to increase the growth? That's what he's promising. It'll increase the growth, and that will offset the tax cut. It didn't in his first term, so why is it going to work in his second term?
Tony, I don't know the exact debt number. What was the debt number under Donald Trump without taking into consideration COVID?
It was before. All right, I'll answer that. I'm not penalizing him for COVID. When he started the tax cuts, when that tax cut went into place, this got buried because COVID came on top. I'm answering it. I'm answering your question. When he took office, the deficit was $500 billion a year. Obama had gotten it down to $500 billion. When Trump put that tax cut into place, it went over $1 trillion. First time in peacetime that the deficit went over $1 trillion. But that got hidden because immediately on its heels, we were into COVID. It'll do the same thing again. There's no secret here.
No, you believe you're going to solve the debt problem by taxing your way out of it, and it's never ever happened in world history.
That's not what I appreciate the call, Tony.
It has though happened, Jeff, because the idea being you're talking about getting out of a deficit. If you had someone that was a business owner, and thanks for the call, Tony. If you had a business owner and you asked them that you're running on a deficit, do you cut how much you're spending, or do you grow revenue?
Do both.
But most businesses,
and you
most
think
business
you're
owners will
grow
say,
revenue
we
by
need to
stealing
grow
it
revenue.
from other people.
We need to grow revenue. That would be the idea, is you need to grow revenue.
And you believe
That's
the
easiest
only way to grow revenue is to tax it.
No, that's one of the ways, but there are other ways as well. But that's not
by having a successful economy, which we didn't have under Joe Biden. All right, let's go to.
It's debatable.
What are we dealing with on time?
Let's do.
Let's go to Parker.
Yeah, Parker in Longmont.
Parker in Longmont. Good morning, Parker. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Morning.
Morning, Jeff and Bill. First of all, I'd like to say that I wouldn't want Bill as my professor because I don't like the way he grades, but that's okay. We just have differences. I would have to say I'll make it pretty simple, give Donald Trump an A+. I'm with Jeff on that. If he didn't do anything for the rest of his term in office except secure our borders, make our nation safer for our people in this country, and, back our military and our law enforcement, I think he gets an A+ on that, and that would take him through the rest of his term, even if these other things didn't get done that he's trying to get done. And he's going to have the headwinds to get a lot of these programs done. It's just the way it is, And I truly believe too that we could probably get rid of about 50% of all the programs we've got going in Washington these days, and say, hey, we would be just fine. The American people would take care of our people.
Tell me this, Parker. If we can get rid of 50% of the programs, why hasn't Doge and Trump done that? If they're looking for that efficiency, if they look for it, how come they haven't?
No, because of the headwinds. I mean, it's not going to happen, Bill. But because of the headwinds. I mean, I have a lot of faith in the because people are just going to fight him on everything he does because they're just 50% of the country does not like him. That's all there is to it. They don't like the way he...
That's fine. But there was a lot of the country that didn't like Joe Biden, but there's things that he was able to accomplish as well. Could this be now, Parker? What I'm asking, where I'm going with this, Parker. Hang on, Parker. What I'm going with this. What I'm going with this is less about Trump and more about the idea that functionally how he's going about it. And that's what I think the weakness is in your argument so far. Is he's going through it through executive order, so it can be rolled back. We get somebody else like a President Gavin Newsom or a President AOC, and again, I'm trying to scare you with those names purposefully. I know, but that president potentially can just roll back all of these great accomplishments by Donald Trump. Doesn't that worry you at all?
Well, no, it really doesn't worry me. It really doesn't.
Why not?
Because because I think for the most part, our country is going to grow. Our country is going to do just fine. I'm pretty positive on that.
Is it?
I think, even if they roll back a bunch of those, I mean, really, who makes America work? It's the 365 million people that go to work every day, and we work with every nationality under the sun, and for the most part, I'd say we do just fine.
Let's look at that, though. Let's look at that. So the people doing the work, et cetera, consumer confidence has dropped 4 months in a row since Donald Trump was elected. It is the lowest it's ever been, I believe, on record, or near the lowest.
Yeah.
That doesn't say a lot about. And I understand Jeff doesn't like polls, but that is a real world poll. And again, the economy runs on feelings more than anything else. Just ask Joe Biden and the Democrats about the last election, as far as the economy running on feelings. And so that is a direct poll of the U.S. Economy. People saying they're not strong and they don't trust it at this point.
Bill, I think you're wrong on the feelings part of it. I think the reason that Trump got in there is because the people wanted one thing. The top priority was secure our borders, bring back law and order in our country, protect our citizens. And I don't care what anybody says, whether you like this guy. I don't 100% agree with everything Donald Trump does, but I do believe he's got the heart of the American people there.
Well, Parker, though, he talked a lot about lowering prices, lowering energy prices, lowering grocery store prices on day one.
I think it'll happen. Happen.
No, he said day one. He said it would be so easy, and we're 100 days in, and we're not seeing the reductions that he's promised. I mean, eggs are down, but eggs are higher than any time they've been since 2022. Gas is up since his.
I still think.
How are eggs down and then also higher than any time since 2022?
Because of how graphs work. Because where you are in the point in the graph in 2022, the graph line can go up in the air and then it can go down in the air. And so where we are now can be a drop from where it was on January 20th, but it also still can be higher on the graph than they were in 2022 when everybody's complaining about prices.
Is it higher than the 1800s too?
Normally, yes, but if you look at the idea of where the arc is, but Donald Trump was talking about, but again, if you're talking about if you're comparing 1800s to now, based on time value of money. That's different than 2022 to 2025. Time value of money constrains the comparison because, the dollar always.
But you just switched there. He said that he was going to lower costs on day one. He has lower costs since 2024.
No, I'm saying on
you're going
inauguration.
back to 2025 or 22,
Yeah, 2022.
and to go, well, it's still higher than that.
Well, and
no,
the reason,
he delivered on what he said he was going to do.
The reason being because of how the arc works. If you look at the arc of egg prices, we had the bird flu, and you have this very, very sharp rise that happens right before Donald Trump gets into office, and then it falls as things change there. And so what I'm doing is I am discounting that. I think that is an unfair spike because Donald Trump doesn't have any control over that. He has no control over that number at that point. So I'm looking at where it is realistically over the course of it. And I don't see functionally how he's lowering grocery prices. Grocery prices as a whole are up since he's been inaugurated. So that's the problem, is what I'm looking for is where are those wins. And Parker, I know that you were talking about security, but it was a 1-2 punch. It was security and do you see what I'm paying at the grocery store? Those were the two narratives that were going. And right now I'm hearing you say that he has succeeded on 50% of it, but not on the other 50%. And would that be fair then, Parker, to give him an A if he only completed 50% of the work?
Yeah, because I think the 50% that he did make great headway on was the border, and I think that's probably about 3/4 of what the American people, maybe more, wanted more than anything else in our country. No, I think the American people will say, hey, we'll take a little bit of this other pain, and I really believe it's going to be good for everybody.
Oh, no,
give it another
Parker, you crossed the line there. Parker, personally crossed the line. Once you said, I think the American people said, we'll take the pain. No, my friend. The whole idea was the pain they were feeling in their pocketbook and their budget, and that's why we couldn't possibly have another Joe Biden or a Kamala Harris regime, because look at what they had done to us.
We were feeling the pain with that Biden group,
I know, but again,
4 years
you said the
they were in
pain.
there.
Yeah, you said the pain, and the pain hasn't disappeared. And what I'm looking at is you're saying we felt the pain all the way through the Biden group. I don't remember a single Republican voter going, you know what, I'm going to stand a little more pain so Donald Trump can do X with the economy. It was I need
I
relief.
think they're willing to give him some time to work here.
Yeah, we got to give him time to work.
Promise.
That wasn't the day.
I know.
Give it a little time.
Yeah, the guy that said day one, and it's easy now says we have to give him time. That's the issue. That's
Bill,
what
we
the show's
just
got. Thanks for the
showed
call,
you how
Parker.
it was day one. All right.
Appreciate the call, Parker. I appreciate your thinking on that.
Where are we on the breaks? All right, we got to get to our first one.
Yeah, we got to take the first break. Yeah, but hang with us, Francis. You're up after the break, man.
All right. Phone lines are open. We got a few open lines here. 303-696-1971. It's Donald Trump's first 100 days in office of his second term. It's report card day. Is Donald Trump going home to his parents with an A, a B, a C, a D, an F? I think A+. Bill thinks a D. What do you think? Join the conversation. This is the only show in Denver where you get to be a part of it. Give us a call at 303-696-1971 or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line at 720-819-5115. Look, are you ready to transform your kitchen or bathroom into a stunning masterpiece? Look no further than The Art of Granite for your premier destination for exquisite granite marble quartz countertops. For over 15 years, Mitch Floria, owner of The Art of Granite, has been crafting and installing custom countertops, fireplaces, showers, and more. Their team of experts will guide you through the selection process, ensuring you find the perfect stone to match your style and budget. Visit their showroom in Golden or browse their online inventory at theartofgranite.com. Discover the endless possibilities for your home renovation project. And listen to this. All you got to do, mention KNUS and you get a free bathroom countertop with new kitchen countertops, or choose a free kitchen or bathroom sink with any countertop package. Don't wait. Transform your home into the oasis you deserve. Schedule your free consultation with Mitch today. Go to theartofgranite.com. That's theartofgranite.com. And mention KNUS for those exclusive savings. Transform your kitchen or bathroom dreams into reality with theartofgranite.com. We've got full phone lines. We'll get to you all next. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader News Talk 710 KNUS.
Billy and I are having a ball this
This is so
morning,
much fun.
debating the report card that Donald J. Trump would be going home to his parents with after the first 100 days of his second term.
Yeah. And under that comment section, but I'd probably put eats paste.
So I was reading the Atlantic article, and
Yeah.
they're, the left is just apoplectic because they can't figure out what to do with Trump. He's just overwhelming the system. And the best description in this Atlantic article yesterday was the velociraptors have learned to open the doorknobs.
Yes, exactly. That is a good description. That is a good
I
description.
love what he's doing to the federal government. Drive further, cut more, put them all on their heels. Change everything. That's what I like, and that's why I'm giving him an A+. Bill, on the other hand, D.
That's a D. Yeah, and immigration is the only high spot. I see him closing down the southern border and where we are based on immigration and migration. Deportations, it's a little harder for me, and so that hurts getting him up into a passing grade. But I'll give him a D at this point. I see no other bright spots outside of immigration. But that's me.
Let's go to the phone lines. Francis and Golden. All right, Professor Francis, you're sending home a report card. What does Donald Trump get?
Well, okay, I'm going to give him an overall C, but I want to break it down a little bit into categories with comment like you would have in a normal report card.
Yeah, good.
And I'm going to give him an A in immigration, but in the category of illegal immigration. He has not worked with his friends and while he's had wind in his sails in Congress to actually reform ways to get into this country legally through steps. And this is his opportunity to do that. So it's watered down. I mean, he gets an A on illegal immigration. I think he gets basically a C- on just immigration reform because he hasn't done anything. And my comment would be that.
But Francis, what does he need to reform?
Yeah.
I think that President Trump has demonstrated we didn't need any Congress to act. The laws are already there. They just needed to be enforced.
Well, no, I think the immigration reform part would be that you have to make a path to citizenship actually workable for people who have even been here illegally. And I know you've discussed this with me before about when you violate a law in the first act that you commit by crossing the border illegally, you don't belong here. I don't believe that. I believe that there's plenty of laws that have different gravity, and I think that is one that we can work with to try to get people here legally that we need here. We need these people here. So that's where, and I think you take the opportunity while you've got support in Congress to do this, and the whole public attention is focused on it. And of course, the deportation stuff is just red meat for the masses. That of course you weren't going to deport hundreds and thousands of people. Certainly not within the 100 days. We'll have to see. It's kind of a work in progress, but there was never realistic goals there. He set unrealistic goals. That's my comment for the deportation issue.
Francis, on Congress, I want to ask you about this. He has to get 60 votes to pass anything out of the Senate. That's 7 Democrats. Where are the Democrats?
Yeah,
why blame Trump entirely for failures in Congress when you need 7 Democrats that are willing to cross a party line and support the president's agenda? You don't have really any that are willing to do that.
On the immigration front, my comment would be he didn't even try. And I think that this is relatively low-hanging fruit if you can find a few right-leaning Democrats and create a system to get people here legally and not disqualify them if they were caught here illegally ever, because that's the disqualification in our system right now. And so I think you could have worked, you could have tried. And I think this is where the opportunity is to not be as hyper-partisan, even though some of your supporters may not like it. You have a chance here, and the chance is going to go away in 2 years. So take it. The other, as far as other things, I think economically, I would say the tariffs have been a complete failure. I don't think he understands them, and I think that would be merit at best a D, possibly worse. Although he seems to be at least understanding or listening to people who are telling him about tariffs, and I think that's good. That shows positive signs of growth. But my comment would be, young Donald has been focused on this issue his entire career, and as a public persona, and as a politician, and he needs to change his focus. This is not a healthy nor productive area for him to continue to worry about.
But
As
Francis,
far
I
as
think
other
the
things,
alternative, though, if you don't like what Trump's doing on tariffs, the alternative is we're just going to continue to do what we've always done, global free trade, which I put free trade in quotes because it's not really free. You have China ripping us off. You have trade disparities between countries. So we're just going to continue to go down the route of manufacturing jobs fleeing this country while we buy cheap plastic crap from China. People can't move up in classes. They can't advance monetarily anymore in this country. So if not for Donald Trump trying to reindustrialize this country via tariffs, what's the solution? We just go back to the way things are?
No, I think you got to get with the legislature again and get them off their rear ends and have them do their jobs. Here's the problem I see is that I don't believe that there is a CEO of any company anywhere that is going to take off and try to get factories permitted and things like that with all the time and effort that it takes and money in the face of a weak T executive orders on tariffs. Those are as temporary as you can get. They don't have force and effect of law. And if I'm a CEO, I'll be doggone if I'm going to start sinking money based on that sand foundation. And so I appreciate the problem that he seems to have addressed, but he's missing an opportunity on a correct way to fix it. And once again, I think this is all part of once I get to another comment about Donald Trump is that I really think one of my primary comments, and this would be in executive orders on all of this stuff, is Donald Trump appears to suffer from a form of ADHD, and I very strongly, despite whatever Robert Kennedy would say, would recommend some form of a prescription to help his attention deficit disorder because he clearly has it. I would also say, as a teacher grading Donald, I would say I strongly recommend that you limit his screen time. It only inflames his obvious ADHD and creates a attention and time wasting problem for Donald in completing tasks. The final thing I would say as a comment is just Donald needs to focus more on tasks at hand, once again an attention problem, rather than Donald. Donald's primary focus always seems to be on Donald. And so I would strongly advise that we work on continuing to kind of eliminate distractions so he doesn't lurch from issue to issue making mistakes and focus on tasks at hand and that one task that's off of his agenda is him.
Well, Francis, I think that's the most comprehensive grade report we've received today. I may disagree with portions of it, but Francis, I really appreciate the call. I love the fact that he can manage so many complex things coming at him all at one time. Francis, I just disagree with the idea of he needs to focus entirely on maybe a select few issues. Some of the most successful CEOs I've ever met are people that have had ADHD, because to take everything coming at you all the time requires somebody that can jump in between them all so quickly. But I will tell you, Francis, you definitely thought through that. Well done. I appreciate the call. 303-696-1971. If you'd like to join the conversation, let's go to Chad in Greeley. Good morning, Chad. You're sending Donald Trump home with a grade report. What is he getting?
You know, I'd probably give him a B overall, a 3.0. Immigration, he's done pretty good there. Yet people are going to have patience on this economy. You can't just snap your fingers and expect prices to go down. Inputs are going to have to go down.
But Chad, didn't Donald Trump, though, on the campaign trail say snap of the fingers? Numerous times he said day one. Numerous times he said it would be easy. Numerous times he said we would be bringing them down right away. So are you excusing his behavior for not reaching his stated goals? Are you becoming one of those enabler parents that despite the child saying, I will turn in the book report on this day, you're saying, well, you have to understand it takes longer to put together the book report?
You've worked in the private sector, haven't you, and managed cash flows? That doesn't happen immediately. Anybody with any common sense, any business knowledge knows that cash flows cycles take time.
But why did Donald Trump say that then, Chad? Because he's worked there. He is a guy that has run all these large businesses. He understands cash flows probably on a level that I don't. How could he possibly then stand there on the podium over and over and over again and promise us on day one it was going to happen? Because he should know better. He should know better, shouldn't he, Chad? He should know better. He should know that he was lying to us. Is that what we're saying?
Stop. Right away, he got busy doing the things that he could to lower input costs. You know,
Like
and people
tariffs?
might not agree with it.
Tariffs don't lower input costs. You know that.
Well, how else are you going to force people to negotiate? We've been getting screwed. You're going to have to go blow for blow.
Chad, your point was lower input costs, and tariffs do the exact opposite. So he's not lowering input costs, is he?
So are we just going to continue, you know, how else are you going to force people to negotiate? How else are you going to do that?
See, the thing for me is that you use the word force, and that's where I think Donald's making a huge mistake, especially trying to force our neighbors, Canada and Mexico. Remember, during Trump's last administration, he signed the biggestest, most beautifulest, most wonderfulest trade deal ever. He redid NAFTA that he said was horrible, and he signed the USMCA, saying it was one of the greatest trade deals in all the history of everness. And now it's horrible? And now our neighbors, the trade deal that he negotiated, somehow our neighbors are violating us and taking advantage of us? Something's not straight, man. Something's not straight.
Yeah, things I don't know the details of those those said trade agreements. I do know. I work in the ag industry in Greeley,
interesting. Okay.
And you know, and so. People, it's not good. The reality of it is, it's not good. You know, it's not good all the time.
No, not
things
all.
go up and things.
Now what
things
about
go
this?
up and things go down.
Now
and, you know, the American.
Yeah, you're in the ag industry. What about the idea that, you know, some of the tariffs and some of this trade war hurts things like the soybean industry here in America? We try to export a lot of our soybeans over to China. China went to a different supplier during Trump's previous trade war. What about that?
Yeah. Stop. Here's the deal.
Yeah.
Soybeans are obsolete. Brazil has raised their acres farmed by two times.
Yep,
They've
you're
doubled their amount of acres in production. Soybeans are obsolete in this country.
I would agree. Yeah, but the idea is we still have farmers that are out there that are farming them. So do we allow? So I'm leaning on your expertise and your information as far as being in that ag industry. Do we just tell those farmers that, well, you've got to choose another crop, or do you tell them they have to change, or do they sell that land? What would be your solution if soybeans are obsolete? What would be your plan? If I gave you Trump's ear and said this is how we need to transition that part of the industry, that part of America's agriculture industry that is worth billions of dollars, what would be your idea? I'm just looking for your experience, man. That's it. I mean, there's no judgment. I'm just wondering.
You know, they're just going to have to adapt and roll with the times.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Now,
Chad, I appreciate the call. Thanks so much.
Chad.
Chad's
Appreciate
line
that.
will be open. Speaking of farmers, let me tell you about our good friends at the Colorado Farm Bureau. Whether you pulled out your skis or snowmobiles this last winter, it was a great year for winter fun, but the snow means even more to Colorado agriculture, and I want you to know that our state's farmers and ranchers are doing their part to protect our future water resources. The people of Colorado agriculture always have conservation, efficiency, and reuse top of mind when it comes to water use. As the metro area continues to grow, the Colorado Farm Bureau leads talks with state policymakers about preserving water for all areas of the state as pressure on the water system grows. It's going to take all of us to find a solution. My friends at the Colorado Farm Bureau are leaders in water conservation and water policy. They understand how to balance water for crops and water for families, and they're doing more with less. You can do your part. I recommend you join and become a member today. All you got to do, go to coloradofarmbureau.com. That's coloradofarmbureau.com. Join them there and help support the great hardworking farmers that are producing food for our dinner tables. All right, we'll get to more calls. We do have an open line. Give us a call, 303-696-1971. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. We're grading Donald Trump on his first 100 days. I'm an A+. Billy's a D. And that pretty much reflects what this show's all about.
Yes, it does.
And everybody else is calling in to share their thoughts,
that's
which
great.
we love. Let's go to the chairman. The chairman. What grade do you give the
greetings,
president?
guys. How are you?
Doing good. How are you,
Greetings,
Chairman?
guys. I'm doing good. Just going through the I-25 corridor.
Oh, my goodness. Now, if we don't finish up with you here, we'll hold you and bring you back after the top. What grade would you give Donald Trump?
I'd give him an A,
An A? Okay, Chairman, hang on right there. We're going to tease you because we're going to tease it with an A. We're going to get back to the chairman in a second because you hear the music in the background. We're going away. Bye-bye.
Yep, chairman will be. Stick around, please. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
KNUS.
It is 8 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Tuesday, April 29th, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned in to the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights and hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Let's go back to the phone lines. We're talking Donald Trump's first 100 days of his second term. Taking a report card home to his parents. What grade do you give him? For me, it's an A+. What about you, the chairman? What are your thoughts?
I give him an A, and I do that for a couple of reasons. Mostly, this is a man that fought incredible odds to get back to that office. Not that he needed the meager pay that they give a man in that office, but he has a heart for the American people. And many times in schooling processes, people grade students by, how nice their handwriting is. I went to Catholic schools, and you got bad grades and slaps on the hand if you didn't have your cursive just right. If you couldn't grammatically correct something. These were all measurements. But with Donald Trump, the measurement is, look at what we've had. Look at what Joe Biden and his crime family did to this country and the people that helped him and the press that denied it. And here's a man that stood up, took it in the chin, took it on the head. They tried to kill him. They tried to imprison him. They did everything they could do to take away his spirit. And you can't do that with some people. And Donald Trump is one of those people.
Now, Chairman, that's a lot of theys that you're ascribing motivation to. Yeah. And they going and trying to kill him? Who's they? And what evidence do we have about they trying to kill Donald Trump? I understand that we had 2 assassination attempts, but help me connect to they.
Okay, so I would say if I'm thinking in terms of who they would be, I would say they would be anyone who profits from the chaos of dissension and brokenness in this country, where the people no longer have a leader. So
Fox News.
No, I'm not saying that the news did that. I'm saying that
the
federal government has a lot of deep-seated people in there, the deep state. This is well known.
So you believe the federal government tried to kill Donald Trump?
No, not the federal government. I believe there are people in the federal government that profit from.
Okay. Now, couldn't Donald Trump and everybody that's put in charge be in the perfect place to uncover all of that? That's kind of what I'm looking at. And the reason I'm going this direction is that's what I'm looking at with Kash Patel. Kash Patel and Dan Bongino talked about the FBI being dirty, 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 dirty. And so far, we haven't seen investigations. We will wait to see till the end of the term. But so far, we don't see any investigations into that. Donald Trump is now back in the Oval Office. If the 2020 election was really stolen, Donald Trump is in the perfect position to prove that it was stolen. Also, you talk about the Biden crime family. Pam Bondi isn't talking about investigating the Biden crime family anymore. James Coomer's oddly dropped that ball as well. And wouldn't Pam Bondi be in the perfect position to go after what you assume to be the Biden crime family as well? And why isn't that happening?
Well, in my opinion, the reason that you have very little, we'll call it reporting on what's going on, is because you wouldn't give a play-by-play on how you were circling the cats, because they're very quick to scam away and not be caught in anything they're doing, because they're able to say, well, it wasn't our cocaine. We don't know where that came from. And then it goes away, and they don't look any deeper. And when you think in terms of a presidential appointment like Donald Trump had, I mean, a majority of people voted for Donald Trump to be in office because they want what he's doing right now, and that is he's definitely cleaning up the border. Are the tariff? I'm not going to try to segue away from your question, but it's such a bigger swash of a brush. I'm in the furniture business, and in 1990 when we started, the Chinese weren't really importing a lot. They were importing a few things, but they became very efficient at building a machine that would service the world in the way of furniture. and we didn't have the tariffs there. And I worked for a factory here in Denver that after 70 years in business, they closed right in 2019 because of the very fact that they weren't able to compete furniture for furniture with the Chinese.
No.
On
Great
level.
points, Chairman. And I'll tell you who they are that are trying to assassinate Donald Trump, because I meet them every time I go to an anti-Trump protest. It's leftists. Every time I go down there to Denver, there's always calls for the assassination of the president or the death of him, or every single time. That's who went after him, and that's who they are. All right, Chairman, I appreciate the call. Now is time for news and comment with Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Hey, good morning. 43 and sunny in Denver, expecting a high of 67 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story.
Republicans in Congress are getting very close to passing President Trump's one big, beautiful bill, which will include the largest tax cuts in American history.
Day 100 of the DJT administration, and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent in a presser with Caroline Leavitt last hour on the tax bill. He says it's going to be going much better than he would have thought, and that's because of 47's leadership. They're going to give permanence to the 2017 tax cuts and Jobs Act, which will help Americans.
Tax bill is moving forward. It is going to give permanence to the 2017 Tax Cuts and Job Act, which will, back to the question on certainty, it will give American business certainty, it will give American people certainty, and then President Trump is also adding the things for working Americans that is talked about earlier: no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, making auto payments deductible. So that will substantially address the affordability crisis.
DJT heads to Michigan today. President Trump also talked about the big raid in the Springs by law enforcement here in Colorado. And the Mexican Sinaloa cartel is being linked to the drugs found in the Springs nightclub raid. DEA Special Agent in Charge, Jonathan Poland.
We do believe the drugs that were found inside this nightclub and that were being sold in this nightclub week after week were being supplied by people there associated with the Sinaloa cartel.
According to Denver 7 Investigates, federal authorities have arrested one person associated with the foreign terrorist organization. The DEA says 115 people were detained and are being processed by ICE. This makeshift nightclub has produced a reported 170 calls for service to the Springs law enforcement dating back to last year.
The club has operated out of several different addresses over the last 6 months or a year. Every time this club pops up, there's criminal activity. We're talking about prostitution, drug trafficking, calls for service on violence and other things.
And about the grades after 100 days, or at the 100-day mark, the fake PSYOP polls with the Main Street media and all that stuff. CNN's Scott Jennings says DJT is going to keep on chugging away.
So I think if you see some of this movement, some of these announcements, I think that will help with the economic numbers. I don't really think Trump is the kind of person who gets freaked out by the polls, frankly. I think he's quite confident in what he's doing. I don't sense a lot of panic over at the White House, and I don't really think they think the 100-day mark, which is arbitrary, we talk about it, but it's arbitrary to them, is something that they were looking at as a deadline for any of this to be done.
Pierre Poilievre, leader of Canada's Conservative Party, has lost his seat in Parliament to Bruce Fanjoy. The Liberal Party wins. Mark Carney elected Canada's Prime Minister, a globalist and a lefty, a big lefty. Canadians got their feelings hurt by DJT, and they turned back to the lefties. They folded to Carney.
These are not idle threats. President Trump is trying to break us so that America can own us. That will never, ever happen.
No, President Trump is trying to show you how lefties like Carney will take away their freedoms and destroy their country. They are on their way. It doesn't look like the real ID deadline will be extended this time. The Trump administration says all states will need to comply by the May 7th deadline. Real ID is an enhanced security driver's license that will be needed in order to board any domestic airline flight. You can take photos with the NBA's Larry O'Brien Championship Trophy at Union Station until 8 tonight. That's when the Nuggets and the Clippers tip off Game 5 of their series, tied at 2. Last night, the Avalanche and the Stars, let's see, in this one.
Floats wide as Nichushkin was tied up by Granlund. Back the other way comes Hintz. Driving the net, Rantanen, he's got it! Score! Against his old team, Rantanen for the first time in this series.
That was a tough one for the Avs to watch. 6-2, Dallas wins it. They lead 3-2 as it returns to Denver. 40 in Castle Pines, 40 in Lakewood, 43 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue.
Well, I don't know if you know this or don't know this, but, to me, I'm always impressed with the meals that you get on Air Force One. Really impressive.
Yes, John Decker, can you imagine the breakfast you could have this morning on your way to Michigan? Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Your 710 5-day forecast will get some clearing skies as we start off our Tuesday morning. Morning temperatures in the upper 30s, afternoon highs lower and mid-60s. Just a slight chance for a late afternoon or evening shower or thunderstorm, otherwise partly cloudy and lows low to mid-40s. Wednesday, upper 60s, low 70s. A new cold front will bring increasing clouds, showers and thunderstorms Wednesday night through midday Thursday. Weather brought to you by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather. Schedule your free no-obligation roof inspection at roofingcolorado.com. Meteorologist Don Watzel in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. And if you're dealing with a slow-healing cut, a diabetic ulcer, a pressure sore, I have got someone you got to talk to. The people at Wound Care Associates of Colorado. Yeah, you're like, Bill, I'm sitting around here with an empty open wound, and you just think I'm just letting blood and stuff ooze all over the place. No. But what I'm saying is that maybe you or someone else in your life has so much going on that maybe prioritizing that slow-healing cut, it's not on the top 10 of all the things that you're dealing with today. You or that family member. But it can turn into a very big deal, just like it did in my own family. My aunt, a number of years ago, had a slow-healing wound on her leg. And they wanted to maintain the wound, cleaning it to make sure it doesn't get any worse, not heal it. And while her skin and tissue were torn open, it allowed MRSA access to her bloodstream. She had numerous bouts in and out of the hospital because of MRSA, not because of the original wound, but because of what she was exposed to because the wound was kept open by the wound maintenance company. Yeah, the people that were just maintaining the wound, keeping it open. It eventually ended with some amputations, and it was awful. I wish she didn't have to go through that, and that's why I'm excited to talk to you about Wound Care Associates of Colorado, because you or anybody in your family doesn't have to have the same experience. When you go to coloradowound.com, you can set up a personal private appointment with the wound certified nurse practitioner at Wound Care Associates of Colorado. Yes, I said private. You're not going to a location. You don't worry about where their offices are because they come to you. How cool is that? Not looking at how far do I have to travel, how much time do I have to take off, what's it going to do, do I have to face traffic coming back? Nuh-uh. None of that. And that goes for anybody that is in an assisted care or, like retirement home as well. Anybody in your family, they will go to them. In the private comfort and convenience of their own home or your home, they will set up a personalized treatment plan that is going to have improved healing outcomes. That means they're focused on making sure that skin and tissue heals and it closes up, because that is the best way to make sure that you don't get a secondary infection. That's what happened to my aunt, and it's what happened to Jennifer Walker's uncle. The secondary infection is what took his life. So Jennifer said nobody else should ever have to deal with something like that. So when she founded Wound Care Associates of Colorado, she made sure they're doing it right. You get personalized treatment plan, better healing outcomes, and concierge house call service. And all you got to do, coloradowound.com, coloradowound.com. When I had a surgery with my youngest daughter in our family and the wound wasn't healing properly, I went to Wound Care Associates of Colorado at coloradowound.com, and she's doing great now. Reach out to them, coloradowound.com, coloradowound.com. Back to you, Jeff.
Great. Bill and I are talking about Donald Trump's first 100 days of his second term. How would you grade him? In light of this, Bill, I want to get your thoughts. Canada will never yield to Trump's threats as Prime Minister Carney declares election victory.
Yeah.
Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney said his country would never yield to the United States as he declared victory in federal elections early Tuesday following a campaign overshadowed by the provocations and steep trade tariffs imposed by U.S. President Donald Trump. The Liberal Party leader issued a stunning rebuke of Trump as he sent a message of unity to a divided nation, promising to, quote, represent everyone who calls Canada home. As I've been warning for months, America wants our land, our resources, our water, our country. But these are not idle threats. President Trump is trying to break us so that America can own us, Carney said, as he hailed a remarkable reversal in fortune for his party. That he says that idea that President Trump will ever own us will never happen. What's your read on this Canadian election that kind of put the Liberals back in, because Justin Trudeau resigned?
Yeah.
In many ways, in shame because of how poorly his party was doing. Conservatives back in January were poised to take electoral victory. Do you blame Donald Trump for this? Is this Canadians just being nationalistic instead of globalistic? Come on, Canada, get on board with all the globalism that's. But maybe they're just acting in their own best interests. Yeah. What are your thoughts, Bill?
Well, how many of us are seeing the South Park song "Blame Canada" in our head right now? I'm just curious. The thing that surprised me,
Canada,
blame Canada, blame Canada. Yeah. Now, I was surprised when the party that leaned into the nationalist spirit and the Canada First brought the Liberals to power. That, again, just as a function, if you talked about what party would be more nationalist here in the U.S. and ride a streak of nationalism to the White House, we would all assume it would be the GOP and the Conservatives. I'm just talking about how weird it is that it was a wave of nationalism that we saw in Canada, and it's Liberals that end up there. I don't understand. That's just a side note. It's just a side note for me.
Yeah, do you consider it nationalistic? To your point, Bill, Is this them tapping into nationalism and winning?
Yeah,
totally. And maybe it's Steve Bannon, but just on the other side.
It is 110% them tapping, in my opinion, into nationalism, because it's the idea of protecting Canada from the U.S., because we are now seen as untrustworthy. Not necessarily overwhelmingly negative, but they feel like we have been, fun neighbors, and we've trusted each other, and we've talked over the back fence for years, and we've set up ways that our economies can work together, and then you watch each other's cats when you're out of town and stuff. And now they feel like we've started arguing over where the fence line is and whether or not their sprinklers are watering our grass and whether or not our sprinklers are watering too much of their grass, and so they're not having to water their grass as much. So we seem to be very nitpicky on what was going on, and we talked about for years America was trying to, again, it goes back to NAFTA, the idea of creating a North American trade zone. And now we're violating that. So Canada doesn't trust us. at this point, and there are going to be economic fallouts. And I think that's what it is. It was whatever party in Canada could capture that nationalistic spirit were going to be the ones that ended up on top. And it surprised me that we saw this earlier, that it was the Liberals. However, the prime minister that was elected, he is an economist. So if you had a guy that was out there that is going to be able to talk the nuts and bolts and be able to persuade people on why things are not going well based on Donald Trump's tariffs and how we need to work on it, it's this dude. And he has been a well-respected economist in Canada for a while. So not surprised based on the choice, but surprised based on the party.
I don't find it particularly damning of Donald Trump that Canadians picked a Liberal Party to lead. I don't find Canadians particularly intelligent to begin with, in part because they had Justin Trudeau as their prime minister for the last, decade or so? I mean, you put that guy into leadership. You had a chance to go conservative, put a good conservative, what seemed like a good conservative. I was impressed with some of the speeches and interviews I saw from the Conservative Party leader. But in this case, no, we're going to go back to the Liberals because we don't like Donald Trump.
Now, to play devil's advocate, could Canadians say the same thing about Americans being dumb because we elected either Joe Biden or Trump? Based on their personal purview, couldn't they make the same argument?
Definitely Joe Biden. We literally put in a brain-dead corpse into the presidency and then didn't challenge him and allowed the media to lie about it. And Donald Trump exposed it during the debate.
But I would just caution on the idea of we put a brain dead corpse into office. I would say that you probably should talk about that being part of the way through his term, because otherwise that means Donald Trump lost to a brain dead corpse. And so that's it. Is be careful on that one. The idea that
if you believe the election was honest, Bill.
Yeah, but we're not going to do that one today because, and again, we don't have to argue about whether or not the election was honest, because if it wasn't, Donald Trump has all the keys to the kingdom to prove it wasn't. So if he really truly believed, if in his heart of hearts he felt that he had lost that election, he would be doing things right now, and he may not tell us about it, but he may reveal it. So if he really did, this is the perfect and only chance he has, because when he's out of office, he doesn't have the same power or access.
I do want to see that.
If it was stolen, he needs to prove it the next 4 years.
Suzanne is wondering why I just called the entire country of Canada stupid.
I was kind of surprised with that one too. I was kind of surprised that too. That's because they are one of our most trusted neighbors, and they've been one of our better trade partners. They've been one of our more established
I think they've
allies.
been pretty bad on religious freedom issues. I think they gave up all their guns. I think they put in Justin Trudeau regularly. I don't think they have any idea how they're going to negotiate against Donald Trump, and Donald Trump's going to win this trade battle eventually with Canada. So no, I don't find them particularly where I look at Canada and I go, you know what we should do? Trust what they do.
Here's the thing. Okay,
I just don't see it.
Two things on that one. I'd love to hear what people think. 303-696-1971, 303-696-1971. The first is, if you put Donald Trump up against an actual economist saying that which one is going to be better negotiating based on trade,
100%
I'm not
Donald
certain
Trump.
about that.
100%.
Oh, no, not even close. Now, what do you mean win? You say you think Donald Trump is going to win the
trade war?
What I'm looking at is what's win? How do we define winning? How do we know? Because if we don't know what winning is, we don't know when we get there.
No, sure.
So
Let's define it. Canada buys more stuff from us, and we have more products produced here in America than we did in Canada.
So, but more stuff? Canada just has to buy more stuff. That's
it. Part of it. Yeah, that's the trade deficit.
So they trade deficit, but the trade deficit just has to be lower, and that's a win?
Sure.
But, But I thought it was because of fentanyl and illegal immigration and other stuff.
Part of it. Yeah,
so
you can add that to the equation, too.
Yeah,
as well.
So it has to be. But again, fentanyl and illegal immigration doesn't really come from the northern border more times than not, because that's the issue. Is I think that winning is so amorphous, because right there we don't necessarily have a goal. Not necessarily. No, what you did is you said an increase. So an increase of $100 of Canada buying $100 more stuff would be a win, and that's what I'm talking about. Is because I believe.
Why wouldn't it be?
No. What I'm saying is I believe that Donald Trump and his administration are defining winning in such an amoebic-like way that they can declare win no matter what. And I think that's the issue, just like you did there. The idea is if we make more stuff here, okay, but it's not necessarily more stuff that's going to be done instead of Canada. It's not going to be stuff that Canada is going to produce, and it could be more expensive here. I'm not certain that if we produce something more expensive here, that could be made less in Canada, given our relationship with the two of them. We're not talking about China or giving away intellectual property. I don't think that's a win that the American worker that has to pay more for that, when the economic and market efficiencies would say we could make it could be made better and made cheaper in Canada.
You don't want Donald Trump to win on anything.
No, that's not a matter of him not winning. I'm worried about his game plan.
I mean, if he got $100 more, that would be a win. Why wouldn't you consider that a win?
It's because $100 is irrelevant mostly. And here's the idea: is I'm not worried about trade deficits. I think the entire issue about whether or not we're worried about trade deficits is economically obtuse, I guess would be the best way to put it, because at the core, it really doesn't matter. As far as trade deficits, it has a heck of a lot more to do with the countries involved, GDP, what that trade relationship is, a whole bunch of other stuff. Because you could go to somewhere like Burkina Faso, that we are going to import a whole heck of a lot of things from them based on raw materials. But because of where they are economically, they're not going to be buying a lot of American goods. So based on numbers, we would have a significant trade deficit with them. But that's not necessarily a negative. That's why when Donald Trump talks about trade deficits and why he's worried about them, I look at that and think, you have no idea what you're talking about, because as a whole, trade deficits don't necessarily matter. That's the problem I have with this, is he's focusing on the wrong numbers. That's what I'm worried about. I'm worried about that he's trying to coach the team, worried about how many first downs we get over the course of a game, and not concerned about touchdowns. And so at the end of it, he's going to say, hey, we're just making more first downs. The fact that we're not scoring anything doesn't matter. That's what I'm worried about. It's a bad analogy, but you get my feeling.
Well, join the conversation, 303-696-1971. Do you blame Donald Trump for the losses in Canada?
Or blame Canada.
Or do you blame Canada?
That's a great song.
I blame Canada. I don't find them particularly interesting leading on the national, international stage. Anyways, they picked Justin Trudeau for years. They're bad on guns. They're bad on religious freedom. They don't have a very strong military. I'm not that impressed. Sorry. So you picked another liberal to run. I'm not going to blame Donald Trump for that. You did that to yourselves. Or do you think Donald Trump cost the conservatives in Canada an opportunity? Give us a call, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line at 720-819-5115. Suzanne saying, I am being mean to Canada. Other text messages saying, Bill, you should just move to Canada. So there we go. Take your snakes to Canada, Bill.
I wonder if I could. Yeah, I could. I think most of them are allowed there. Yeah, I could. You know, there are some snakes you can't own here in Colorado. You can own them, but you can't buy them online. You can't buy them from breeders. Hognoses.
How are you allowed to own a snake but not buy a snake?
Catch it in the wild. Yeah, like you have to, like if you have bull snakes or hognose, you have to catch them in the wild.
That doesn't seem to solve a problem, because now you're sending people out to go hunt for them.
I know. I'm not saying that it's the smartest thing. I'm not saying that the rules are right, but yeah, you can't buy a hognose or a bull snake from a breeder here in Colorado because they're native species. Yeah, you can't buy bull snakes from breeders. Nope, you can't. Not in Colorado, they won't ship them to you because you got to go catch them out in the wild, which is how I caught mine originally. Yes. Been there, done that. Yeah.
Well, there you go. All right, join us on the phone call line or the text line. By the way, I want to talk to you about our friends over at Advanced Hair Restoration. While Billy and I may disagree about the good people of Canada, we agree that Advanced Hair Restoration gets the job done if you're losing your hair and desire to have it back. Advanced Hair Restoration has the easiest guaranteed solution. Their simple one-day treatment offers life-changing results. Guys, I've seen it with my own eyes. It's not magic, but close to it. They put hair where you need it the most, and bam, it grows. It's actually science. Advanced Hair has it all. Top-rated Dr. Tanya Paul's modern technology, and best of all, you get your own natural hair that begins regrowing the very next day. Advanced Hair even guarantees it will grow for life. So schedule your free consultation now, 720-459-HAIR. If you qualify, you'll get $250 off and 250 free hair grafts. Advanced Hair is the winner of Westward's Best of Denver 2 years in a row and has changed the lives of tens of thousands of people. So don't wait. Check out the before and afters online for yourself, 720-459-HAIR. That's 720-459-HAIR, or visit advancedhair.com, advancedhair.com. Liberals winning again in Canada. Who do you blame? Canadians themselves, or do you blame Donald Trump? You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Canada elections yesterday, putting the Liberals back in power. What's going to happen to the trade war? 1514 texting in. As far as Canada, on the surface, it looks very reactionary to Trump, but it also kind of seems in the vein of Canada to continue pursuing liberal leadership. I don't think that this will really impact the trade war one way or another. Really?
Interesting.
I think it will, because I think the liberals are going to be empowered to go fight Trump on this trade, and Trump is just going to go, all right, we'll just more tariffs.
Yeah, and I think this is going to be difficult for Trump, primarily because the dude now in charge is an economist. That's going to be hard because a lot of Trump's bluster is not going to play well, that he's not going to be able to stumble or fool his way through the conversations, because this guy will understand the real world problems and consequences of what Trump's doing when he's talking about, hey, we will just continue to take in billions of dollars from Canada because of all these tariffs. The Canadian Prime Minister knows that, no, that's Americans that are paying the prices. So that's going to be difficult for Trump in these negotiations. But again, Trump is not doing these one-on-one necessarily. So hopefully his team will be able to do it better than he has. So, but I don't know. This is going to be difficult. And the fact that they went with the liberal versus what they saw in America does say that they're looking for a fight. That's going to be a problem. Did you see in Florida, they were just saying that a lot of the Canadian snowbirds are putting their properties up for sale. And that's okay, because those are homes and condos and things that can be purchased by Americans. So we can purchase them if we have the money. But the tourism isn't going to be there, etc. We can talk about whether or not it's a good thing or a bad thing. But, those are some real world consequences of this.
I have no love lost for the Canadians. If you remember, they booed the national anthem, the American national anthem.
Yeah,
so, all right, you want to do that?
That would be okay. That would be post-tariff.
Then you pick this guy.
But that was post-tariff, and that was remember, because it was USMCA was supposed to be, we're all getting along and we're doing this North American free trade thingy, and now so I understand why they're mad. They feel like we signed an agreement, and then we decided a couple of years later, that agreement's no good. Let's go on our own. And so they feel like we're not living up to our word. So I understand why they'd be pissed. I would be too.
Doug saying, morning, guys. It's the Canadians. I put them in the same category as the Californians, and in some cases, the Coloradans. They know what the problems are, but continue to vote for progressives. Doug, I agree with you on this. See, 1514. These are just tariff battles, though. I'm talking about the tariff war, but yes, to really accomplish something with it, we have to have a mind shift, and how we as citizens of the United States view tariffs. Really, they're just sales taxes.
Yeah, and that would be interesting. And I understand 1514, what you're talking about as far as sales taxes, but understand then that's taxes. And that would be the GOP and Donald Trump advocating for increasing taxes on the goods and services you purchase. And that's interesting, because how many people would vote for Donald Trump if he said, the first thing I'm going to do is make sure that we are going to raise taxes on the vast majority of manufacturing products and consumer goods at the store? He wouldn't have won any votes. But that's the function of what happens inside of the tariffs. And that's going to be interesting. And I haven't seen, and I still would love to see, people keep talking about the idea that we're going to bring manufacturing back. Let's see. There will be some that will happen, but there will be some that will also leave. I just can't find in the course of history any developed nation that's been able to tariff themselves back into a manufacturing nation. I've just never seen that in the arc of history.
Ronald Reagan and Harley Davidson.
What? What about it?
So in this case, Harley was losing the motorcycle battles pretty significantly to the Japanese.
Yeah.
And they went to Ronald Reagan. Pete talks about this and says, put tariffs on to give us space to rebuild Harley Davidson so that we can build motorcycles here in America. And it worked.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. One company. That's great. Yeah.
Okay, you just said you haven't seen any, and I provide an example.
I'm talking about, I know that's there are individual examples, just like I said at the beginning, that we will have some manufacturing that will come back and some that will leave. I'm talking about as a whole. If we're going to bring manufacturing back, we can't say, here's a Harley Davidson plant, here's a Ford plant, here's a GM plant. Manufacturing's back. Woo! We have to see a manufacturing industry develop. And while Ronald Reagan did that, I don't see a development of the manufacturing industry. And that's what I'm looking at, because if these tariff works, it has to be an industry. It can't be siloed. It can't be an individual case. That's individual case.
Why do you, in your mind, for this to be successful, does it have to be broad industries returning as opposed to
because that's the
company
promise.
by company? Because that's how you build industry back, company by company.
Because that was the promise, that we are going to bring manufacturing back, not that we are going to bring back a couple of companies. That we're going to bring manufacturing. So if we're going to be manufacturing, we need to be manufacturing cars here. We need to manufacture electronics here. We need to manufacture refrigerators here. If we have one company that comes in and starts manufacturing refrigerators here, that's fantastic. But as the overarching sense, if the majority of refrigerator manufacturers aren't doing it here inside of America, is that a win? Did the tariffs work? That's what I'm looking for. We were promised industry. We were going to rebuild the manufacturing industry. So
Right.
I'm judging it based on industry, not based on companies.
I think you do it business by business, so I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But give us a call. Phone lines are open. You can hear them start to come in, 303-696-1971. If you do have a business in America, you got to protect it, right? Especially in Colorado, all the challenges we face. Reliability isn't optional when business security is on the line. It's essential. Businesses trust alarm detection systems for the highest level of service and expertise. Think about the time you could be saving using one source for cameras, key card access, fire and intrusion systems. ADS offers expert alarm installation and testing by highly trained technicians. They have 24/7 professional monitoring, same day or next day service upon request because downtime isn't an option, dedicated teams for cameras, access control, and fire alarms, and over 300 security professionals working for you. Choosing ADS means your business stays protected and will be ready to open tomorrow. They combined human monitoring with the latest AI camera technology to prevent crime in real time. They're trusted by small and large businesses, including many Colorado schools. Their security experts will review your system for free. All you got to do, go to adsalarm.com and schedule today. adsalarm.com, alarm detection systems, the first choice of Front Range and Colorado businesses. adsalarm.com. We'll continue with your phone calls and texts. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS. Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. This is News Talk 710 KNUS. We have one phone line open 303-696-1971, 303-696-1971. Going to the phones right now, going to talk to Iggy, talking about Canada. Did Canada's new Prime Minister, the Liberal, get elected because of Trump? And who's winning this trade war? Iggy, talk to me about tariffs, Trump, and trade wars, man. How are you?
Well, I'm doing great. Actually, I called. I was going to tell you that, I'm not a big fan of anybody that has control over my life or any kind of influence like that. And I think he's a great tool, right? And and once you're done with the tool, he's no good anymore. You get rid of him quickly. But I love the way he slapped around Europe and slapped around the EU. He slapped around all the trade organizations like the Divine Aid or whatever they call themselves, and the World Economic Forum, see?
Got a question for you, Iggy. If he's been slapping around those trade organizations in Europe and everything else, what do you think his chances are of getting deals done and having them trust us in the future? And the idea being, let's say that you trusted your neighbor, and then your neighbor starts slapping you around about, borrowing equipment or where the fence line is or whether or not, your grass is too long or something else. What does that do to the relationship? What I'm looking at is the fallout of the relationship of Trump. You like the fact that he's slapping these people around, but what's the fallout to the relationship?
Well, they just become transactional. It's not permanent. As long as you guys, and just like I'm talking about a politician with somebody power, you just keep him long enough as he's doing as a tool, right? It's transactional. I don't need any long-term necessarily. When it comes to trade, as long as I'm benefiting from it, that's about all I care.
Yeah, but what do you do? Come at it from the perception of either Canada or Mexico. We had signed the USMCA, was supposed to be the greatest trade deal ever in the history of the world, according to Donald Trump. And now, just a few years later, we go back on our word on that signed piece of paper. If you were Canada or Mexico, would you trust the U.S. when we came to the table and said, let's negotiate about tariffs?
Well, that is a good question because actually I've heard from other people that was an incredibly great deal that was signed, but they haven't followed through, especially Mexico. I mean, Mexico has done nothing but try to undercut everything we've got going here, on a political level, whether it's with illegal immigration or allowing, to use their border to infiltrate fentanyl into our country. Same with Canada. Now, Canada has done nothing with fentanyl up there, right?
Well, but there isn't a lot of fentanyl that comes in from Canada into the U.S.
There's more than you think.
I don't think so. Because the numbers that we were getting were minuscule compared to the southern border. And the issue I've got is we had fentanyl and drug trafficking was an issue before the USMCA, as was illegal immigration. Trump negotiated the deal. Why wasn't that part of the deal? And if Mexico was violating terms of the deal, there are enforcement mechanisms contained therein. Wouldn't we use those?
Not necessarily. Biden. I mean, that wasn't Biden's goal, was it? He would have just ignored it. if it was in the deal.
Yeah, that's fair, and that's why I'm asking about Trump. Is Trump's not using those ideas, that option. So I'm curious about that one. Thanks for the call, Iggy. I want to make sure we get enough time for everybody. Of course, this is a team favorite. It is time for Joe from Arvada. Joe from Arvada.
Hi,
Welcome
Billy.
to the Jeff and Bill Show. How are you, man? How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing fabulous. I love what's happening.
Yeah. So what have I got wrong? I'm assuming you're in an A. I'm assuming you're in an A for a grade. But tell me what I've got wrong, my friend.
Let's go back, and for all of us who watched, all of the people that are in Trump's cabinet were coming on regularly on the War Room telling us how it would go, and this is how it would go. We knew there would be a trial time of pain. You can't have 50 years of degrading the American economy, shipping our jobs overseas, underpaying Chinese to manufacture whatever. You can't do that for 50 years and expect, the day Trump comes into office, it'll all be better. No, it's not going to happen like that.
But that's what he said. He said that on the campaign trail.
We understood that for political expediency, you have to explain to the American people that it's going to change. You just don't say, it's going to take a little while.
But Joe, hang on, Joe, but stop. Hang on, Joe, hang on.
2 years.
He didn't say, Joe, he didn't say this will take, he didn't say this will take time. He said lower prices day one. He said he was solving the problems, just like 24-hour resolution for the
and the
Ukraine
gas have
war.
come down. Haven't you noticed?
But they're still higher. They're still higher than they were before, and they're higher than the mean.
No, they're not.
Yeah, they are.
Eggs and gas are not higher. I drive for a living.
You
don't know what you're talking about.
Gas.
Anyway,
Joe,
I drive for a living.
Joe, I understand you do, but I checked this morning. Gas is at $3.16 a gallon nationally. It was $3.12 when he was.
I check every day.
Joe, I just checked this morning. It's $3.12. It was $3.12 when he was inaugurated.
You check.
Okay, I know. Joe, hang on. I just told you it's $3.16 today nationally. It was $3.12 when he was inaugurated. That's not going down.
I drive for a living.
But that's not down.
It has
we understand one number is bigger than the other.
What do you not understand?
What do you not understand about one number being bigger than the other?
Something ask any driver. They can tell you gas has come down. Anyway, here's the point, Billy.
Okay.
Billy, you can't change things in a day. It's going to take some pain.
Trump said he was
going to. So here's what's going to happen.
There was no pain on the campaign trail.
Before. We're going to have a terrible collapse for the first year or two of our economy under Trump. Then once we hit I call it the bottom out level, we will start a progressive increase for the next 50 years. Now here, Billy, the one thing you've got to understand, we did not do this overnight. It's not going to happen where we turn it around overnight.
But Donald Trump said he was, and he never talked about pain. He didn't talk about bottoming up the economy for the first 2 years.
He said gas was going to go down.
No, he said grocery.
He said the
grocery
price
prices
of eggs would come down.
And grocery prices and all those.
And
are
it
up
has.
Still. They're still,
the price of eggs have come down.
No, and grocery store prices are up.
I paid $9 for a thing of eggs before. They have come down.
No, wait, I talked about it earlier based on the relative where the mean was in the median. No, they've gone up. They still are a little bit higher. They've come down from where we had the influenza, the bird flu. Yes, they have from that high, but that's an unfair spike. But as a whole, eggs are still more expensive than they were, and that's the issue. Is he promised that it was going to be immediate, and that's where I'm pushing back. And I appreciate the call, Joe. Is the idea is he never said pain. There was nothing on the campaign trail that says we're going to have to go through 2 years of pain where the economy is going to collapse, as Joe said, and then we will rebuild it. I don't remember that ever. Anyone remember him saying the economy is going to collapse? But, well. Deborah Flores in studio with us. We're going to change gears here in a second. This is News Talk 710 KNUS. Good morning. Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Jeff's had something come up. He has to run out of the studio. So that means, yeah, you're stuck with me. The horror. No, you're not just stuck with me. We've got Deb Flora going to be joining us in the studio. We're going to talk about Moms for Liberty. There's a rally coming up for 1312, but also want to continue the conversation about tariffs, economy, the trade war. How Donald Trump, what's a grade you would give him? We're at 100 days. 100. You've got that, You've got the report card in front of you. You're running down. How's it doing? Is it that Donald Trump needs to pay more attention in class? Is it that he gets too distracted? He should stop talking to his neighbor? Is it that he needs to turn his assignments in on time? Or is he being that wonderful A student? Jeff's giving him an A right now. I'm at kind of a D, and kind of the comments in the bottom is eats paste. But not certain that's necessarily fair. Would be curious about your opinions. 303-696-1971. 303-696-1971. But again, Deb Flora is going to be joining us here in the studio. We're going to talk about a rally coming up against House Bill 1312. That is the transgender rights bill. But before we get to the fun, we need to check in with Blake Olson and find out everything going on in our world out there. Yes, it's time for Blake Olson, News and Comments.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, News and Comment.
Good morning, 48 and mostly sunny in Denver on this Tuesday morning. Expecting a high of 67 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story.
Republicans in Congress are getting very close to passing President Trump's one big, beautiful bill, which will include the largest tax cuts in American history.
Day 100, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt talking about the bill, the big one, the big, beautiful one, and also unloads on Amazon for announcing they will display tariff costs to consumers. She just got off the phone with the president.
This is a hostile and political act by Amazon. Why didn't Amazon do this when the Biden administration hiked inflation to the highest level in 40 years? And I would also add that it's not a surprise because, as Reuters recently wrote, Amazon has partnered with a Chinese propaganda arm. So this is another reason why Americans should buy American. It's another reason why we are onshoring critical supply chains here at home to shore up our own critical supply chain and boost our own manufacturing here.
Is Jeff Bezos still a Trump supporter?
Look, I will not speak to the president's relationships with Jeff Bezos, but I will tell you that this is certainly a hostile and political action by Amazon.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent in the presser with Leavitt last hour. He says it's going much better than he would have thought, and that's because of 47's leadership.
Tax bill is moving forward. It is going to give permanence to the 2017 Tax Cuts and Job Act, which will, back to the question on certainty, it will give American business certainty, it will give American people certainty, and then President Trump is also adding the things for working Americans that is talked about earlier: no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, making auto payments deductible. So that will substantially address the affordability crisis.
Well, DJT has shut down the borders, of course, north and south, and talked about the big raid in the Springs by law enforcement on Monday. He talked about it. The Mexican Sinaloa cartel is being linked to the drugs found in the club. DEA's Jonathan Poland.
We do believe that the drugs that were found inside this nightclub and that were being sold in this nightclub week after week were being supplied by people there associated with the Sinaloa cartel.
According to Denver 7 Investigates, federal authorities have arrested one person associated with the foreign terrorist organization. The DEA says 115 people were detained and are being processed by ICE. This club is just an example of what happens when you have the left running the country, open borders, and evidently they aren't bothered by this.
The club has operated out of several different addresses over the last 6 months or a year. Every time this club pops up, there's criminal activity. We're talking about prostitution, drug trafficking, calls for service on violence and other things.
The left isn't bothered by the flood of fentanyl into the country either. It's National Fentanyl Awareness Day today. Pierre Poilievre, speaking of Canada and the borders, leader of Canada's Conservative Party, has lost his seat in Parliament. Bruce Fanjoy, the Liberal Party, wins. Mark Carney elected Canada's Prime Minister. He's a Euro-globalist. Canadians got their feelings hurt by DJT, and then they turned back to the lefties, folded to Carney like sheeple.
These are not idle threats. President Trump is trying to break us so that America can own us. That will never, ever happen.
DJT just trying to help them realize they're inches away from tyranny. 4 students are dead in Illinois after a vehicle drove through an after-school camp building on Monday. The vehicle hit multiple people outside of the building before continuing through the building and hitting even more. One was 4 years old, and I think another girl was 18 years old. Last night, the Avs and the Stars in Game 5.
Floats wide as Nichushkin was tied up by Granlund. Back the other way comes Hintz. Driving the net, Rantanen, he's got it! Score! Against his old team! Rantanen for the first time in this series!
6-2, Dallas wins it, and the Stars lead 3-2 as it returns to Denver, the series does. You can take photos with the NBA Larry O'Brien Championship Trophy at Union Station today until 8 o'clock tonight. That's when the Nuggets and Clippers tip off Game 5 of their series, tied at 2. 45 in Lone Tree, 46 in Lafayette, 48 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue.
I understand you do, but I checked this morning. Gas is at $3.16 a gallon nationally. It was $3.12 when it was.
I check every day.
Joe, I just checked this morning. It's $3.12. It was $3.12 when he was inaugurated.
I needed that this morning. Thank you, Joe.
Me too, my friend.
You gotta get your dose,
dude,
man.
Got to.
At least once a week.
It's fantastic to see Joe's name blinking on the screen. It's fantastic.
No doubt. He's one of the best.
He is.
Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Typical late April weather for Denver. Temperatures will be in the 60s today, partly cloudy. A couple of showers and thunderstorms this afternoon and evening. Temperatures will make the 60s, near 40 tonight with showers ending. Near 70 Wednesday, partly cloudy. A few showers and thunderstorms late. And then overnight and into the day on Thursday, showers likely, cooler Thursday with highs only in the mid to upper 50s. Weather sponsored by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather and schedule your free no-obligation roof inspection today at roofingcolorado.com. That's roofingcolorado.com. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Jeff had something come up, so he had to run out of the studio. But you know what? When something like that happens, we make sure that we go with #1 draft picks. Yes, we brought in one of the best, Deb Flora, back at her old stomping grounds here at KNUS. Morning, man. How are you?
Morning. I love the football analogy. Growing up with the Broncos, I'm going to date myself, but the Orange Crush. I mean, all of that. Great days. John Elway.
Only
love
the really
it.
cool people understand who Randy Gradishar is. Only the really cool people.
I have to tell you one funny story, Bill.
Please,
okay,
please.
Randy Gradishar, first of all, he goes to our church right now, and so it's always great to see him.
Oh, that's great.
But when I was growing up, he lived in our neighborhood, and so in Aurora, and it was so funny. My mom was driving one day. She comes home. She goes, Randy was out walking his dog, and I almost hit him. I'm like, Mom, thank you. The Broncos, thank you. And I thank you that you did not. I don't think she actually came close. It was just a close encounter. But there you go. Great football history.
You want to see protests outside of your house? Hit Randy Gradishar back in the Orange Crush days. Everybody in the neighborhood's going to be protesting you guys.
Oh, goodness. My mom was a wonderful woman. I just want to say that.
Yes. Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, because Randy Gradishar was one of those lunch pail work guys that came to work and did it right.
Oh, and still just such an amazing man. His wife is wonderful. They're just good people, and a great period of Bronco history. Hoping it's gonna return full force.
Yes. We all have. That's the thing. We all put on our orange glasses, especially during the off season.
Indeed.
Yeah, because again, right now the Denver Broncos are unbeaten.
I know.
Best thing in the world.
Hey, I love that. I
Yeah.
love it. The problem is you always start at the top and can only go down versus the other way around.
Yes.
I'd like to take it the other way. We haven't won a game yet, so then we can only go up from
yes,
there.
we can only, yes. All the Rockies fans understand that rationalization that we're going through right now. Well, that voice you hear is Deb Flora. She is back in her old stomping grounds. Jeff had something pop up this morning, so she is gracious enough to, on short notice, come in and co-host this morning. We appreciate the heck out of that. Now, she's here also for another reason. Moms for Liberty is going to be hosting a rally having to do with the transgender rights bill. That's 1312 we've been focusing on here on the Jeff and Bill Show. Deb, can you tell us about Moms for Liberty, what the rally is? How can someone that's listening to the Jeff and Bill Show right now show up and show their support?
Love it. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Great, by the way, to be back in this chair and talking to the amazing listeners of 710. Just love it. Yes, so Moms for Liberty, I'm on the national board, and there's some great chapters here in Colorado. And, you know, it's really been at the tip of the spear. You'll hear all kinds of things about Moms for Liberty just because they were one of the largest organizations to really make a difference for parental rights, particularly being founded during the COVID shutdown. And so what is happening, you all know about 1312. Well, we can dissect that a little bit as well. But what we need on our side of the movement is everyone to come together. Some great organizations here on the ground. There's a Colorado Parent Advocacy Network. There is Protect Kids Colorado, and we're all coming together. This is a coalition town hall this Thursday evening, coming up this Thursday evening. It will be at the Beck Center in Aurora, and we're going to have amazing speakers. We're going to have the co-founder of Moms for Liberty, Tina Deskovich. I'll be helping to host and moderate. We're going to have a couple of our legislators to tell us how the heck did this bill get as far as it has gotten. Going to have Aaron Lee. We're going to have someone from Alliance Defending Freedom there, because if this passes, it is one of the cases that could go all the way to the Supreme Court. We want to let people know how they can be prepared. We're going to have someone from Heritage Foundation that has studied this policy. And most of all, Bill, we're going to have 3 parents talking about how, for the most part, this is already happening in Colorado. These are parents, 2 of them who've already lost custody of their children because the state took the side that they did not have the right to say their child could not be transitioned. So we're going to hear from their stories. And then most of all, it's a town hall. We want you to come, ask questions, be informed. So it's Thursday evening, this coming Thursday. Doors open at, I think, 6 o'clock. It starts at 7. Come with your questions. We do hear that there's some of the crazies that'll be coming out, so come and make sure your voice is heard as well. And you can see more. By the way, you do have to register. Just want to make that clear. It is free, but you do have to register, and we will have security because we know that these things can get a little crazy.
Also, there's a fire code, so you got to do head counts.
There you go. You got to know.
If you're planning for 10,000 or 4,000 or whatever it is. So registration's important for
100%.
planning.
So go to momsforliberty.org/town hall, or just go to my Twitter page. That's Deborah Flora 1, and you will see Deborah Flora, the number 1, and you will see all the information. We hope to see you there. Here's the last thing I'll say about it. Well, not the last thing. That's probably a complete untruth.
That's good.
But a detail about why we're doing this. As we know, testimony will be happening tomorrow. But what usually happens, Bill, and I was one of those parents all the way back in 2018 when they passed the comprehensive sex ed bill on the last day. And what this bill is, we said, this is what's coming. This is what's coming if you shut parents out of what their children are being taught. Well, we've got to make sure they don't pass it on the last day. So this will keep major attention on it, national media attention, local media attention, to make sure in these final days they understand that Coloradans from every walk of life, we're inviting the Islamic community, we're inviting the Ethiopian community, we're inviting the Hispanic community, that Coloradans from every walk of life do not want this.
Yeah, so if you're concerned about the direction that 1312 would take Colorado, it's a transgender rights bill. I've got things that I agree with on it and things that I disagree. I've been very open about that here on the air. But what you can do to support Moms with Liberty is show up during this Thursday night's town hall, and it's going to be happening at the Beck Center in Aurora. That is 800 Telluride. Yeah, I know nobody knows where 800 Telluride is. Basically, it's 6th and Airport. 6th Avenue and Airport on the west-hand side. That's where you're looking for. So what time does everything get rolling this Thursday?
It gets rolling at 7 p.m. And let me just say, the reason why we're having it in Aurora, we want it as close as possible to Denver, where people are debating this horrific attack on parental rights. Couldn't get a spot in Denver. Not surprising, actually. So it's in Aurora, my hometown, where I grew up.
Well, then
so
again,
it's in Aurora.
You don't want to take everybody downtown except over the homeless and the things. And that's the thing. Is it's difficult when. It's sometimes not fair, and maybe it is a little fair. Deb Flora joining Jeff and Bill this morning. Jeff had something going on. That's why you're hearing Deb's wonderful voice joining us live. And again, stepped in on a moment's notice. This is fantastic. We cannot give her enough props for doing this. The idea that when you tell someone, hey, we're going to go downtown. I'm just going to go a different tangent for a minute. Now, and you're talking about bringing the event for Moms of Liberty down there. That's a huge event. But, even talking to friends and family and saying, hey, we're going to go downtown for X, Y, and Z, sometimes, depending on what the event is, they're like, oh, do I really want to go down there?
100%.
Yeah.
I'm gonna really date myself here in saying that. Okay, I remember, and I do the elbow, wrist when I say this.
Yes.
I was Miss Colorado, and going down to the 16th Street Mall with all of the candidates, and it was beautiful, and it was a wonderful place to be, and it was so exciting. Now I'm a mom. And our kids now are 20 and 21. But I remember when they went to their first event downtown, I was like, okay, I'm going to walk you through every step and where to park. It's unfortunate. It's really an unfortunate thing.
It is because, and I'll do you one better. I'll date myself here. I remember when former radio host Steve Kelly crawled down the 16th Street Mall on his hands and knees.
Yes. He would not want to do that now.
No.
He'd have to do it in a hazmat suit, I hate to say.
That's a good one. He had to get a hazmat suit. He's like, oh, geez, there are the needles. There's the puke. There's you can't be doing that right now. Now, let's talk about the House Bill 1312, the transgender rights bill that's coming through. I've been open about how I believe that the heart for the Democrats is in the right place, but I believe the execution is wrong. What I think they've missed inside of the totality of the bill is malice. That this is a self-assumed guilty. There's no innocent until proven guilty, and that's where I have a lot of the problem contained inside the bill, especially, and the one that is easiest to talk about is the idea of misgendering or using a dead name of someone inside of a business. That for me, that is an easy mistake to make 110% of the time. However, very few times is actually done with malice. Now, if you're doing it out of malice and you're trying to be mean or cruel to that person, yes, I do believe there are protections that are needed, but unfortunately, inside of this bill, none of that is outlined. It's an assumption of guilt. So talk to me about Moms for Liberty and their position on 1312 and why they think this is a bad direction for Colorado.
100%. So a couple of parents we're going to hear on this panel, and this is for the town hall Thursday evening, this Thursday, 7 p.m. Join us, please. We're going to hear how in a custody battle, if one parent wants to transition their 5-7-year-old, then it becomes a custody issue where the state gets involved and parental rights have been taken away from those who don't agree with transitioning children under a young age. But this will take it a step even further. To me, really, Bill, this is the existential line in the sand. This will enable the state, if a child, let's say 5, 6, 7 years old, when I was 5, I wanted to be Superman. So can you imagine what might have happened in that scenario today? Why did I want to be Superman? Because my 3 older brothers were Batman, Robin, and it seemed cool, right? But let's say a child expresses that. Then an entire machine comes around them and says, oh, this child is transgender. This bill would allow the state to come in, and if the parents, even if they're married, even if it is a whole family unit of goodwill, the child is not being abused, this would allow the state to come in and take the child away because it redefines misgendering a child as coercive control, #child abuse. Now, lest anybody think that this is hyperbole, it is already happening around the country where similar bills are in place. There's just a heartbreaking story in California. A Hispanic single mom who did not believe that her daughter needed to be transitioned, and the daughter was taken away from her custody, and later, outside of her custody, the daughter committed suicide. Now, let's add to it one more layer, Bill, by the way. I mean, you've talked about the public accommodations, the fact that in a business it would be called discrimination if you call someone a name different than they want. Once again, by the way, this is coerced speech from the state, which is kind of what the Lori Smith 303 creative case was all about. But let's add to it another wrinkle. I'm going to be testifying tomorrow. Please, everybody show up and testify as well. But I've been there testifying till midnight, and I understand why we also have to have a town hall to keep the pressure on. But the Tavistock Clinic in Great Britain, which led the way, which has since been closed. They were closed partly because they ignored evidence. A study came out that 97.5% of children, we're talking about young children here, not young adults who can make their own decisions, but children that sought sex changes had autism, depression, or other problems that were not diagnosed. Our daughter is autistic. And I sit there and I think, what would have happened if she had been convinced by people around her that the reason why she felt she didn't fit in was because she was transgender and she was then removed from our house? It's the worst thing you can do. So no matter how you look at this bill is an egregious overreach into the foundational building block of Western civilization, which is the family unit. We're talking about taking children away, not because of abuse, there's already a system in there, but by redefining abuse as misgendering your child if you do not agree with transitioning them.
Yeah, see, and I agree with you on the idea of coercive control, and that's where I believe this bill oversteps the boundaries. If they would have, inside of the bill, said in that custody battle that you were talking about, some of the language in there says that it becomes a consideration, and that, to me, seems fair inside of it, because it would be a consideration of how the child is feeling and support on one side or the other inside of a divorce. That seems fair. But when it becomes coercive control, you're right, it begins to border on the idea of child abuse. And that's where I have a problem with this particular bill, even though I'm a strong supporter of transgender rights in so many other areas, because I believe this is the assumption of the affirmative, that they are assuming that you are doing this out of malice, that you're doing this out of a negativity rather than a disagreement or simply a mistake. And there could be two parents that the child is expressing an idea about transgenderism, and that parents can have a reasonable disagreement about what is happening with the child and what they're going through. But I don't think that one side should affirmatively be judged as being the one that is in the wrong. And that's what I see inside of this bill, is that if they would have just stopped with consider, I think then you're allowing the judge to consider what's happening, and then you allow the child's voice, because now the child has a voice as far as what they're doing. But when you get to coercive control, then you're getting into the idea of abuse. You're right.
Right, but let's already put it, and it's a good point. And by the way, when I am talking about this, I have learned, by the way, both running for office and being in these movements, I will never assign a motive to anyone. I don't know what's in their thoughts. I don't know why they're doing this. So I'm not saying this is
well,
this
bill. Work on this show then.
Yeah, because I don't have that superpower. I'm not omnipotent and omniscient. There you go. But the reality is this, even what you were saying about the child knows. Let's be honest, we don't allow children under the age of 18 to get a tattoo without their parents' consent. They have to have their consent for so many things. Can't drink, can't drive under a certain age. But somehow we're saying a 5-year-old child actually knows that they are now transitioning. I share this story all the time. When I was 5 years old, I'm out playing with my brothers. I take my shirt off, I put my cape on, and my mom says to me, because I want to be Superman, she says to me, you have to put your shirt back on because you're different. I look down at my very, 5-year-old body and my brothers. I'm like, how am I different? I don't see any difference. That wasn't transgenderism in my case. That was simply the exploration of the imagination. So for us to begin to think that as a society, we can now trust a child to have irreversible surgeries that you cannot actually detransition. People have tried, but there are irreversible changes made. That's one point. Second, the other point is when we say consider, to consider it, the reality is de facto already happening in Colorado is the fact that if one parent does not want to transition the child and the other parent does, and it may involve a custody battle or not, it is already being considered only from the point of view of, in most cases, of the parent that wants to transition. This one person who's going to be sharing their heart-wrenching story on Thursday evening, even the person that was the guardian ad litem from the court was with the LGBTQ community, was pushing the transgender agenda already, and all these other things. Look, there is a certain segment of our population that is actually at a young age experiencing gender dysphoria. Then that child needs the real support. But when you have a 4,000% increase of girls identifying as transgender, or you have the Tavistock community, the clinic that closed, the largest ones in the world when it started, saying that 97.5% of the time they realized the child was dealing with different issues, but they didn't explore that. I think it's time we just slow it down a little bit, but always parental rights, unless there is real abuse, parental rights should trump that of a bureaucracy, because, by the way, I know this as a mom. I'm not a birthing person. I'm a mom. I know my children better than anyone else does. I know that one day they may want to be a puppy dog. The next day they may want to be a pirate. The next day they may want to be a princess. But that is where the breakdown in this law is.
Yeah, and I see where you're going with that, and that's Deb Flora. You recognize her voice here on the Jeff and Bill Show. Jeff had something come up this morning, so he had to jump out of the power chair. Luckily, Deb Flora, on a moment's notice, just like her Superman hero as a child, flew right into the seat.
Here we go.
I closed that circle there.
Oh, that was so beautifully done. Nicely done,
you.
Bill.
See,
Excellent.
I have my moments, but that's about the only one I'm allowed today. Now, she's here because Moms for Liberty is hosting a town hall that is happening this Thursday, 7 p.m. at the Beck Center in Aurora. That's 6th Avenue and Airport on the west-hand side. Moms for Liberty, come on out and show your support for the people fighting against Bill 1312. That is a transgender rights bill. Town hall is happening this Thursday. Moms for Liberty. You can check it out at momsforliberty.org. You do need to sign up because they need to have the head count. They got to know how many chairs to put out and how many things to have as far as refreshments and things. So that's what you got to think. So you got to do them a favor and sign up for that. Now, I like what you were saying. The thing for me that I understand the idea of some kids wanting to be a superhero, but I've had experience with children that from Jump Street knew that they were gay, and in some cases even knew they were transgender. I have a person that I know in my life that is transgender, older than I am, and talked about from 5. That same that they always felt they were in the wrong body. So that's the problem that I have, is the idea that I don't think there is a universal one way or the other. And I'm with you on the surgery. I do think that surgery under the age of 18 is absolutely 110% wrong. And part of the problem I have, unfortunately, and this you're not going to agree with, but it's kind of fun, is I think that because of our society's lack of acceptance pushes people towards the surgery. Because if I don't appear the way that society wants me to, if I look too masculine, I can't pull off as feminine. If I look too feminine, I'm not going to be able to pull off masculine, so I need to have something altered on my body in order to pull that off so that I then am accepted by the larger group of society. I figure that if we would accept people more as they are, we wouldn't have this push, especially for kids having surgery, because how many other kids say, my nose is too big, my feet are too big, and they're looking for those, that happens all the time.
Well, and you bring up a good point here. Now, first of all, I would say I agree with you, no surgeries under the age of 18, because honestly, we don't let them pierce their bodies without a parent's right at that point, because it's a permanent change. And we also have to say, by the way, hormone therapy is a permanent change. It can cause sterilization, it can cause a change in body and all of that. So we're talking about permanent changes. Give a child a chance to figure it out as they go along. But here's what I agree with you on that, Bill, is that one of my most interesting interviews I ever had right here sitting in this seat when I had my own show was with women from the Women's Liberation Front. They call themselves WOLF. Yeah. They're self-proclaimed radical liberal feminists. We don't agree on a whole lot, and that is great. That is fine. But here's what's happened. That our culture actually, I think, has gotten very intolerant in a different way that maybe you're not thinking of, which is, or maybe you are. We're now saying if you are a boy and maybe you're not just a gung-ho, I'm going to, chew spit and kick and throw the ball kind of boy, then you're actually a girl. Or if you're a girl like I was growing up as a tomboy, or our daughter, you can't just be a cool chick. If you're not all about sparkly rainbows and pink, then you're not really a girl. So very early on, we tell these children that there is a narrow view of what it means to be. When I had WOLF, Women's Liberation Front, I had a woman sitting here who is a lesbian, who really didn't like men for all kinds of reasons. I'm happily married almost 25 years. And she was weeping because we are eliminating and getting rid of women, because what happens, it's a much larger trend amongst young women where we might say, yes, I do believe, Bill, there are some who truly are experiencing gender dysphoria when they're young. That has been clinically proven for decades. No one actually argues that. They deserve support, and that's a very different thing. But when we've got this absolutely exponential erasure of maybe someone is gay, well, then don't transition them to the opposite sex necessarily. That might be who they are. But we've now gotten to a point where the very first answer within our system is, you feel awkward? Well, by the way, that's the definition of puberty. But you feel awkward in your body? Guess what? You're transgender. Oh, you're a tomboy girl. Oh, you're a boy who maybe is more feminine. Well, then you're not actually a boy, you're a girl. How about we let children just be children, be who they are, sort it out as they do. I know several adults who are transgender. If you're over the age of 18 or 21 or whatever is the right guideline, honestly, it's a free culture. You do whatever you want to do. It's this permanent change of young kids. And then getting back to the bill 1312. This bill will allow the state to come in and take a child out of the custody of their parents, not a custody battle, but take them away from their parents if they don't agree to transition their child. That's how extreme this is, and it's already happened in other states. This is not hyperbole.
Yeah, and I agree with you. That is absolutely 110% wrong and a problem, and I don't want the state coming in and taking the child away at anyone. Now, we're going to step aside. Would love to hear your opinions on Bill 1312. What do you think about the gender roles in society? What do you think about surgery under the age of 18? Is this coercive control if you are forcing a parent to support their child's gender transition? If your child comes to you and says, Mom, Dad, I feel like I am the opposite gender, and you start walking them down a path where maybe they aren't, is it now child abuse? Do you agree or disagree? Give us a call, 303-696-1971, 303-693-1971, or 696-1971. And this is Jeff and Bill Show. Deb Flores sitting in because Jeff had something pop up. We'll get to phone calls here in just a second. You're listening to Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710, KNUS. Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. This is News Talk 710 KNUS. We are Denver's talk leader. And Jeff had to step out, had something come up in his life. And so, you know how we always talk about it here on the radio show. Life is always more important. Something popped up. Jeff had to run out of the studio. And luckily, just like when you say faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, ready to leap into the chair at a moment's
there
notice,
you go.
it is Deb Flora. You know that name. She used to be here at KNUS, then ran for office. That didn't work out, but she's back here helping us out, and we sure do appreciate it. We're talking about Bill 1312. Now, Moms for Liberty has a rally going on at Town Hall this Thursday, 7 p.m. Put it on your calendar. This Thursday at Town Hall, Moms for Liberty. It is against 1312, the transgender rights bill. You can join them at the Beck Center in Aurora. That's 800 Telluride. You don't know where that is. It's 6th and Airport. Make sure you go to 6th and Airport. And Deb, they can go to momsforliberty.org to sign up, or they can go to your Twitter. How do they find you on Twitter?
Yes, absolutely. Just go to my Twitter page at Deborah Flora 1. That is the number 1 at Deborah Flora 1. And I just want to say, obviously, you know, it is being billed as a transgender rights bill. I'm 100% for rights for every individual to live their life freely. The reason why we are having a town hall is because it is one of the most egregious overreaches into parental rights that has crossed the dais, shall we say, under the dome, which is saying a lot. It would literally define misgendering as child abuse, therefore allowing the state to take a child from their parents' custody if they will not transition that child. That's not hyperbole. It's happening in other states that I've talked about where they have similar bills. That is why we are standing against it. I believe every human being should be able to live with dignity and without fear. But when it comes to the family unit and parental rights as the very foundational building block of Western civilization, and the state should not have the right to come and take a child away. And by the way, this isn't just, I want to frame one last thing. A lot of people say, oh, this is Christians against LGBTQ. Nothing could be further from the truth. We've invited the Islamic community, the African immigrant community, the Hispanic community, the Catholic community, everyone. Because this should not even be partisan to understand that parents know their child better than any state bureaucracy could. And the state does not have the right to come in. There's already laws if there's real child abuse. We cannot redefine this in criminal code just by misgendering. That is not child abuse.
Yeah, now everybody that's listening to the Jeff and Bill Show understands where I sit on transgender rights, especially the whole idea of the space rhinos. Yeah, you feel me on that one. Yeah, we're not going to do that one today. But this is one where Deb and I have found some common ground on this, because I do believe that they are vastly overreaching and taking away a lot of parents' rights. And I believe that while the music is still playing. Okay, while that the Democrats had their heart in the right place, how they executed this bill is 110% wrong. It makes some assumptions and puts things into class of abuse that I simply don't agree with. And the other thing that I think is missing from how they were writing this is the idea of malice. You that have listened here to the Jeff and Bill Show, I talk about the harm. What is the harm? I challenge a lot of people on that. And here, I don't believe that in 1312 that the Democrats and those supporting it have shown the harm. The harm is not part of the adjudication of what happens inside of the bill. It's an assumption of guilt. And I disagree with that one. Again, you can support Moms for Liberty, Town Hall this Thursday, 7 p.m., Beck Center in Aurora. That's at 6th and Airport. And right now, we're going to go to the phones. Ron in Denver. Ron, dialed 303-696-1971 to get on the air with us. Good morning, Ron. How are you today? Hello, Ron.
Ron in Greeley.
Oh, Greeley. Okay, there you are, Ron. How are you?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, my fault. Sorry, brother. Yeah, no, I'm just curious as far as who brought this to even be questioned.
And are you talking being questioned as far as parental rights or the bill being questioned?
Bill being questioned. Who brought this to say, you know what, these kids they have the right for this sex change? Who is doing that?
Yeah, you can go to legislative.gov/color or whatever it is and find out who the bill sponsors are. And I want to say, as I shared earlier, I don't prescribe motives to people because I'm not omniscient. I don't know their thoughts. But I will say this is an incredibly egregious overreach. And you will hear, we'll have one of the legislators Thursday night, Jarvis Caldwell, who is on the House Legislative Committee that this came out of. There is some funny business with this bill. It was introduced late on a Friday night. No one had seen a draft. When Jarvis simply asked, have stakeholders been consulted on this bill, because good governance looks like you bring something forward, you hear from stakeholders, you consider all sides. And he was literally told by one of the bill sponsors that, no, we don't want to listen to parents who are like the KKK. I mean, this is where we've gotten in our society, the presumption that there are others that know better for a child than their own parents. Granted, not every parent is good. There is child abuse, but there are laws in place for real child abuse. So I can't speak to their motives, but I can say this is an egregious overreach no matter where you stand on this issue.
Well, you know what really disgusts me is that we're living by and double standard is such an understatement. However, you know, when you've got kids that, okay, are they allowed to do drugs? Are they allowed to, you know, drink, smoke, marijuana, get tattoos under the age of 18? And the answer is without a doubt, no, you cannot do that. You need a parental right. You can't get gun. You can't do all these things. But when it comes to the ultimate of a sex change, you know, there was, and I'm trying to remember who it was that said, do you know the level of sickness mentally that you have to be at in order to either want or allow to have your boy have his genitals cut off and go through a sex change? That is permanent, and they're coming out with studies that show people that have done things of that nature that have now gotten older and are so devastated by what they've done.
Yeah, well, and here's what I would say to that. That's the point I bring up. I remember, you know, as a mom, our kids are now 20 and 21, amazing young adults. I had to sign a permission slip if they were going to watch an R movie or a PG-13 movie. I had to sign a permission slip for them to get Tylenol or aspirin. We're talking about permanent, lasting changes, and this is where Bill and I actually agree. You know, when we say that young adults, their brain does not even mature, I think it's, gosh, I don't know if it's 25, 35, whatever it is. It's long after 18. They're not allowed to get a piercing. They're not allowed to get a tattoo before 18. And those are external surface level changes. But they're allowed to take drugs that will forever either sterilize them, change their body structure, or surgery. And I shared something earlier. The Tavistock Clinic in UK, who led the charge in this, they ignored evidence. They've since closed that 97.5% of the children seeking sex changes, we're talking children here. If you're an adult, you can live your life freely however you want to, as long as you don't harm others. But 97.5 had underlying other conditions, autism, being on the spectrum, ADHD, things like that. So agree with you, Ron. It's an absolutely crazy time we're in.
Yeah.
You know, one more thing, and then I'll let you guys go. And I really appreciate what you've given the time for me. The doctors that are participating in this need to be prosecuted for child abuse. This is so sickening. I just am so furious by the thought that this is even on the table, and people that are supposed to be educated are even considering this.
Now, Ron, I got a question for you. I got a question.
Yeah.
When you talk about the idea of the doctors, and again, I believe you, Deb, and I can all agree that we don't think that kids under the age of 18 should be going through surgeries, and we could talk about even some of the hormonal replacement therapies I think are unneeded and shouldn't be done when they're younger. Could some of this idea be solved by just accepting the kids as who they are, rather than telling them they need to represent one specific ideal about what is male or what is female? Could we just support the kids rather than the idea of telling them they need to have surgery in order to meet an ideal, in order to be accepted as how they feel?
You know, without question, there are those times, the phases, if you will, that kids go through. And I don't know what percent, I don't know the studies of what percent of them are phase. I do know that they said that, I believe it was Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt's kid that wanted to dress like a boy. They let him dress like a boy, do all of that stuff, entertained it, and she grew out of it. Yeah. And she's this beautiful woman, and she went through the phase.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Ron, and we got to run. I hate to cut you off right there, but I agree. The idea that if we would support the kids and these type of things and let them do that, they would probably come back, and some would make different choices. Some would continue on the transition journey. Some wouldn't. And so that's a problem that I worry, is that I think sometimes the fix is maybe worse than the medicine, that we're having them try to reach to ideals that maybe we can't.
They let me grow up and want to be Superman with my brothers, and then I ended up being Miss Colorado. So there we go. I got the full journey.
Nicely done. That voice is Deb Flores. She is back in the chair here at 710 KNUS. Jeff had something come up in his life, and so he had to jump out. But just like that Superman hero, Deb arrived faster than a speeding bullet to hang out with us today on the show.
Ooh,
yes,
my cape is flowing in the wind,
yes,
Bill.
It is.
Thank you.
And the cape looks so much better on her. So, yes, give us a call, 303-696-1971, 303-696-1971. What do you think about the Transgender Rights Bill 1312? Is it overstepping bounds? Is it creating a class of child abuse that we don't need? Is possibly this push for transgender rights going to create a backlash here in Colorado and do more harm than good to the actual community they are trying to protect? We want to hear what you think. Right now, we're going to step aside. Give us a call, 303-696-1971. This is Denver's Talk Leader. We are News Talk 710 KNUS. Well, make sure you go to Camp Hyderhachi. Did some bad math. We are running out of time. Deb Flora, we only got like 15 seconds. Tell us again. It's going to be this Thursday night, Town Hall, Beck Center in Aurora.
Yes. Thank you so much. Come to make your voice heard. Ask questions. Going to have an amazing panel. This is about 1312. Go to my Twitter feed at Deborah Flora, the number 1 at Deborah Flora.